initiative can impact positively on other SDG, such as SDG Goal 1, no poverty, SDG Goal 8, economic growth, good work and economic growth. Trade can create opportunity for women and economy, thus making an impact on SDG 5, which is gender equality. Trade can also produce dynamic gains in the economy by increasing competition and transfer of technology, innovation, and knowledge, thereby making impact on Goal 9. And it goes on and on and on because goals are interrelated and interconnected. Obviously, trade works for developing countries because opening up a trade increases a country's economic growth, as it is allow every country to use its resources more effectively and efficiently by specializing in the production of the goods and services it can produce more competitively. Example of what happens to our country, Nigeria, was when we went on recession and we went into rapid industrialization that we couldn't get because of lack of electricity, and planting and growth of rice becomes very, very important to us. And of course, we are able to get out of recession through agriculture. Distinguished participants, as you may all be aware, Nigeria is the largest economy on the continent with a GDP of almost $440 billion. Yet, we still have 3.3% or 23.2 million of about 70 million people who should be working in Nigeria are out of work. And over 92 million are multidimensionally poor. Year 2020 will remain a year to remember all over the world for decades to come. The COVID-19 pandemic has created unprecedented global crisis, disrupting health system and social economic conditions of nearly every individual around the world, including millions of Nigerians. The scale of containment measures employed across the globe, including lockdowns, restrictions and movements, and other non-pharmaceutical interventions, have pushed the global economy into the worst recession since the Great Depression. In Nigeria, from official statistics, the pandemic has further pushed more Nigeria into poverty. While the pandemic amplifies challenges and risks and has led to loss of jobs and livelihood, it also offers opportunity for government to build forward better and help towards achieving the SDGs. The multidimensional impact of the pandemic presents an opportunity to reprioritize investment in trade to delivering economic development for our national development and integrate responses toward achieving the SDG come 2030. Indeed, trade experts has proposed various channels through which trade can contribute to achieving the SDG. For example, many countries use tariff and non-tariff measures on pharmaceutical and other medical products. It is argued that these policies hinder poor people's access to those goods and undermine the goal of promoting healthy lives and developing countries. Free trade in health-related goods and services will potentially improve developing countries' health and care access, with corresponding positive impact on people's lives. Therefore, we must work together as partners, state and non-state actors, to strengthen our collaboration, especially with the private sector, because they play a crucial role in resource mobilization to accelerate efforts by government to bring forward better towards an inclusive job-rich recovery. For Africa, it is imperative that we embrace the African Continent Free Trade Agreement so that our 1.3 billion people are connected to the combined gross domestic product of $3.4 trillion. This will create unrestricted opportunities for decent job and economic growth Your Excellency, distinguished participants, as we recommit ourselves to these global goals, acceleration, and achievement, I want to reaffirm Nigeria's commitment to the achievement of SDGs and other international agreed development agendas. As government, we have established all the needed institutional frameworks that will guarantee effective implementation of SDGs at all levels of government in Nigeria. I hope this conference will continue to reinforce our commitment to closely work together in support of maximizing global trade for sustainable development in this very decade of action for the global goals so that no Nigeria will be left behind. I thank Lagos Business School Management for organizing this and for the production of the 5-year development plan. I thank you all for your time, and I wish you a very fruitful deliberation. God bless you. God bless Lagos Business School, and God bless the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mark, for being here. Thank you so much for that interesting opening remark. And yes, ladies and gentlemen, in case you're just joining us, we have for the opening remark, Princess Adejoke Orilukwe Adefulire, who is the Senior Special Advisor to the President of Nigeria on Sustainable Development Goals. We do appreciate your time, Mark. Thank you so much. All right, in case you're just joining us, again, you're welcome to day 2 of this very, very, very instructive conference. We already know that it is the International Sustainability Conference, and the theme, just to reiterate, is maximizing global trade for sustainable development. Yesterday, we had very interesting conversation, and remember, this is a Dialogue to Action conference. We hope that at the end of all of the conversation we have on this platform, we'll be able to take it to our various businesses, various places of work, and anywhere we find ourselves to continue to push the agenda to set the globe, in the right place for economic growth, job creation, as well as eradication of poverty. My name is Moyosara Lua Elesho Tefia, and it's such a pleasure to return here on today, day 2, for the moderation of this event. So yes, if you're just joining us for the first time, or even if you were here yesterday, you already know how we do it. Please give everyone a round of applause yet again. Just make use of the comment section and put that round of applause, especially for our very, very distinguished yes, please just do that. Thank you very much. Thank you. Please do that for Princess Adejoke Orilukwe, as well as Dr. Franklin, who did the introduction earlier on. Yes, thank you. I can see that coming in already. Thank you very much. All right, moving on very quickly. We are going to move to the keynote address at this time. And the keynote address is focused on the topic, Will Accountants Save the World? The role of the CFO and the accountant in the 21st century, drive for sustainable development. And taking this for us this morning, or taking us on this journey this morning, we have Rodney Iwin. And Rodney Iwin is the Chief Operating Officer, CEO, and member of the Senior Management Team, SMT, at the World Business Council for Sustainable Development, based in Geneva, Switzerland. Ladies and gentlemen, again, with a resounding applause, welcome Rodney Iwin for the keynote address.
Thank you very much, and good morning. We're in Nigeria. Greetings from Switzerland. As I've been introduced, my name is Rodney Irwin. I'm the COO at WBCSD, but I'm also an academic in my own right. I'm a professor of accounting and sustainability at Leuphana University in Germany, and I'm on the faculty of Yale School of Management, where I teach sustainability to the executive MBA program. It's my honor and pleasure to be here today. And as you know, I work in business most of the time. Of course, I've done a PowerPoint presentation. So if you would indulge me a moment till I share my screen, then I'm going to try and enlighten you as to why accountants and possibly lawyers might save the world. So just make sure I get this right. And may I ask the organizers if they can see the full screen?
Yes, we can.
Great. Right. What I didn't say in my introduction is that for my sins, I'm also an accountant. So I was one of those people that when asked what did they wanted to do with their life, said they wanted to be an accountant. So that probably says more about me than anything else. So I started off doing a degree in economics, and I ended up training with EY back in Northern Ireland in Belfast over 30 years ago. And I always believed that as a member of the accounting profession, my job was to act in the public interest. And there's no bigger public interest issue today than the three big sustainability challenges that the world is facing. That is the climate emergency, biodiversity loss, and the gross and unacceptable inequality we see in the world. Now, today we're all living under the umbrella of a pandemic, and that has magnified why it's more and more important to take care of biodiversity, because the zoonotic virus that we're currently battling made its way into the human population from the animal kingdom through our disrespect for biosecurity. And it's magnified the inequalities that we see, but these are only a tip of the iceberg. So what do accountants have to do with all of this? Well, as I said, I trained in a profession that was founded to act in the public interest. And today I want to talk about how we need to shift our mindset as professionals to address some of these public interest challenges. Before I do that, I'd just like to divulge for a few moments just to explain a little bit about the World Business Council and why we've been invited to address you today. So the WBCSD is 26 years old. It is the global business association associated with trying to help companies transition to a more sustainable world by focusing on system transformations that are needed for a net zero, nature positive, and more equitable future. We're truly a global organization with over 215 global members and complemented by over 60 national business councils around the world, meaning that our reach to the SME community is in the tens of thousands. We're very much business focused, and we frame the sustainability agenda as an opportunity for business to innovate and to grow new markets. We're CEO led, so the highest person in terms of decision making within the organization is what makes up our council. And this word market driven, I sometimes struggle with it. I think in sustainability, sometimes you need to make the market, but what this implies is that we see this as being something that is of benefit to businesses, and within the confines of the markets we have today, more sustainable businesses are more competitive because they are able to get lower cost of capital and are more competitive as a result. Together, we are the leading voice of the business for sustainability community, uniting in our vision of a world in which 9+ billion people live well within the boundaries of the planet by the mid-century. This vision is led out in our seminal work called Vision 2050, Time to Transform, which was the first report of its kind to provide thought leadership on the critical strategic business mindset shifts needed to support systems transformation. It calls on all businesses to recognize the need to reinvent capitalism toward true value creation, build long-term strategic resilience, and take a regenerative approach that goes beyond doing no harm or less harm to business sustainability. This reinvention mindset is central to the 21st century drive for sustainable development. And we can only achieve this vision if we establish a form of capitalism that is stakeholder-centered, rather than shareholder maximization, impact internalization, rather than impact externalization long-term. So we're at a point in a crossroads, and the pandemic has highlighted the importance that we need to address this. So against that backdrop and aligned with today's topic, what's this got to do, and why will accountants help us save the planet? Well, the Prince of Wales's organisation, Accounting for Sustainability, issued a report in 2012. So we're talking 9 years ago now, not that long ago. And I remember going to St. James's Palace in London and listening to the launch of this report. And it was depressing to listen to what was being said. Back in 2012, 96% of over 1,000 CFOs interviewed as part of this research study concluded that sustainability was a cost to the business. They said that they saw no strategic benefit for it, and that it wasn't really something that they were into, because all it was money out the door. Well, since then, things have changed. At the same time, in 2012, we had the Rio +20 UN conference, where Peter Backer, the CEO of WBCSD, made the rather bold statement that accountants will save the world. As a former CFO himself, and as somebody who is one of the leaders in sustainable development in the Netherlands, back before it was important for all CEOs to engage in this topic, he put his neck out and said that we really need to be conscious of climate change. We need to be conscious of inequality. We need to be making sure that we leave no one behind. And he recognized that the only way a business is going to do that if it really understands what's important, i.e. what's material, and how to measure it. And he coined the phrase that accountants will save the world. And this was picked up by financial press, and it became a thing. And I've seen people wear t-shirts that say accountants will save the world, which is somewhat interesting, given that this came as a result of an interview from a former CFO. Back then, we were one of the first organizations to highlight the real change would come from reconfiguring the millions of decisions that management and business make every day. Back in 2012, sustainability in business was mostly about issuing a nice report with lovely photographs. It wasn't about integrating sustainability impacts and dependencies into your day-to-day decision-making, into your CapEx decision-making, into your hiring of key resources. It was very much focused on demonstrating, whether rightly or wrongly, that you were a good company. And that's changed. WBCSD, however, said this needs to stop. No more cakes without baking them first. Of our reports that we looked at were predominantly icing, hence the analogy to the cake. I'm happy to see that thinking is far more mainstream than it was 9 years ago, and that this discussion has progressed into include the role of the CFO in understanding and managing the full range of factors that affect enterprise value, and shaping this conversation proactively with shareholders and with investors, as well as other stakeholders. The role of the accounting is changing from bookkeeping to being a key strategic advisor, assessing and managing company value. And today I want to reflect on the three themes of valuation, standardization, and public interest and trust. Now, as an accountant, my job, if I was doing it in the profession, would probably be in the world of assurance, where I'm reflecting on companies' financial statements, and I'm using my professional training and judgment to determine whether those accounts are free from material misstatement. Companies are issuing more and more and more information that is no longer purely financial statement orientated, but that is to do with ESG. And so accountants need to start to address how they're going to provide reasonable assurance on the same level of investor grade information for ESG information as well as for financial information. But I'm also in industry, which means that my job is to provide decision useful information to decision makers to allow them to make the best possible decision in the interests of the company. But more and more and more, we need to factor in the interests of society and the interests of the environment and produce outcomes and decisions that are holistic in their nature. But we have some challenges, and this is what I would like perhaps to leave you with today, to consider what your contribution will be and how you can support the transition to a low carbon economy, a more equitable society, and a place where we respect nature and biodiversity, and how you're going to get your accountant to help you accelerate that transition. Today, the financial system is represented by this little schematic. It's very simple. Many people say the financial system's broken, or it doesn't work. Well, I disagree. The financial system does exactly as it was designed to do. It's a logistics system for moving money from A to B. It flows financial capital from those that have it to those that need it. This little diagram can represent the macro financial system, but can also represent the accounting department within your company. We know that today the accounting department or the financial system is regulated. There's government oversight, and there are standards to allow comparability of data. If we look at the the characteristics of this system, it's very much based on past events and known liabilities. It's monetized, it's rules-based, and it's oblique. There's regular flow of information to the market to allow decisions to be made. Or if you're in a business, there's regular flow of information to the decision makers. I used to work in a transport company and we had a weekly P&L. I also worked in a bank and we had a daily P&L. So there was always information that allowed management to make informed decisions. But also this financial system, through its standards and regulation, is legally bound focused. It only cares about what you control or own. It doesn't care about what you influence. And that's why we've seen the growth in what has sometimes been called the extra financial system or the non-financial system. But if COVID has taught us anything, it's actually part of the financial system. It's just going to take a little bit longer for you to see the pain that something wrong in this system will generate. So if we look at enterprise value, it's increasingly being informed by the factors that are in this pink system. Here, the system is government intervention. It's got some regulation, but it's dominated by voluntary standard setters, meaning that comparability is sometimes difficult to meet. We know that nature and society are also significant contributors to this, and that businesses who don't have a social license will fail, and that nature will always win. But if we look at the characteristics of this system, they're the polar opposite of what we have in the traditional financial system. Instead of being backward-looking and known liabilities, the sustainability agenda is focused on future events and risks and opportunities. Instead of being monetized like it is in the financial system, we are still struggling to be able to put a price on some of these vital impacts and dependencies that we deal with. We still don't have a universal carbon price. We don't have a price on a litre of water that is universally accepted. So most of the data in this system remains qualitative, or if it is quantified, it tends to be in KPIs and hard to compare and contrast. This system does not have regular flow of information, unlike the financial system where information is constantly flowing and forming decisions, and through legal mechanisms like fiduciary duty requiring action. Here, there is a very slow, irregular flow of information, at best once a year. And sometimes that information is too late to make it usable for decision makers. But this system doesn't care about what you want to control. It focuses on what you influence and what you are influenced by. So we see that when you put the two together, we have a problem. And that today, and the role, and again, looking at the role of the accountant, the signals coming from the sustainability system or the ESG environment really struggle to penetrate into the financial system. The financial system doesn't know how to receive these signals because it doesn't fit into the characteristics of the financial system or the accounting department. So this is the fundamental problem today, which we need accountants to fix. And that's why I also say lawyers, because this probably needs some regulation. So at the WBCSD, we've been attempting to address this gap. And we believe that we've made some simple assumptions. Our belief is that things will not necessarily change overnight. And so instead of reinventing the wheel, perhaps we need to work with the existing wheels and make them go in tune with each other. And an example of that, just to whet your appetite for more, is work that we've done to how to integrate ESG risks and opportunities into existing practices such as enterprise risk management. And we also developed authoritative guide or non-authoritative guidance with the IAASB, the global regulator of the assurance and accounting profession. And here, this was launched to help the accountants around the world do better when it comes to the engagements over assurance of ESG information. Now, these publications are award-winning. They're the recipient of the UNCTAD ISO Honours in 2019 and in 2021. So there's a lot of great stuff out there that helps us bridge that gap. We also believe that today accountants are starting to realize that they are part of the solution and not just people looking in from the outside saying that this is something that somebody else will deal with. CFOs today are having to deal with investors demanding better data. They're concerned that there will be regulation that will require them to act quickly to implement mechanisms such as the TCFD or the TNFD. In the European Union, we are dealing with a new taxonomy that will integrate ESG information into corporate reporting. We have created the ISSB under the IFRS umbrella to create new standards that accountants will have to implement. And so we are starting to see that finance, accounting, and the professionals that work within it realize that sustainability is not something somebody else will do, but something that they are implicitly part of their duties. And I'll go back to what I said about the public interest. I'm a member of the Sustainability Committee of the Institute of Chartered Accountants in England and Wales, and this is a key concern for all professional bodies today. My own professional body, the Irish Institute of Chartered Accountants, was founded in 1888 to act in the public interest. The public interest back in 1888 was to provide meaningful information to investors. That hasn't changed 130 years later. The difference today is that we know from science that nature is at war with humanity, and we therefore need to factor that in to how we produce meaningful data for decision making. Nature will always win, and therefore we need to ensure that we play along with Mother Nature and not try and take her on. So, in conclusion, and my thoughts for today and for your final day of this wonderful conference, the financial system is not broken. The financial system does what it was designed to do. The financial system is data dependent. And if we can provide ways of bringing that data into the financial system, we won the best opportunity that we have to get better decision making. So what you see on the diagram now is what we have today, but we need to start to translate the signals from both systems into an integrated system so that we achieve the capital allocations needed for the Sustainable Development Agenda, that we make appropriate market regulations to integrate sustainability into regulation and law, that we have integrated valuation, and that we take what we do today and make it better, such as risk management, integrated performance management, better disclosure, and decision making. And with that, I wish you a great continuation of your conference. And thank you kindly for the invitation. I'm very humbled to be asked to be here today. Thank you.
Thank you very much to Mr. Rodney Irwin. Thank you so much for that. And I think a very instructive statement you made at the end of that presentation is that the financial system is not broken. Indeed, thank you for sharing with us this morning. Ladies and gentlemen, do not forget that you can continue to pass on the information and knowledge from this conference across the social media platforms using the official hashtags for the event. We have 3 of them, and I'm just going to quickly roll them out so that you can pass all of the knowledge across to friends, families across social media platforms. You can use the hashtag ISC 2021, hashtag Sustainable Gold Trade, as well as hashtag Sustainable Africa. Having said that, please can I have you put your hands together for Mr. Rodney as it takes about from the stage right now. Thank you so much. Put your hands together for Mr. Rodney. I want to see you do that in the comment section. Thank you very much. And for those asking for the slide, I'm aware that all of the materials we have from this event, the recording and everything will be sent to all the participants. So yes, I think that should be an added information for those asking that question. Thank you for engaging. Thank you so much. Now we're going to have a very brief video presentation. And afterwards, we'll move on to the next speaker. A very brief video presentation is coming up next.
program started because of the gap we found in the marketplace that NGOs or non-for-profit organizations are critical players in the sustainability space because many private sector companies actually make use of the services of NGOs to actualize their sustainability strategy. Unfortunately, we found a lot of skills gap in these organizations in terms of the way they are run, not being very professional. One of the biggest issues is being able to run these businesses and have succession. And succession means getting young people into the space. So the program focuses on training people who are not more than 35 years so that their interests can be enkindled in this and also get them to become the future leaders in the social space.
And in where are we now, you also look at your environment. And in looking at your environment, we use what is called PESTA. So when you're looking at your environment, under this external, we call it, so people call it pests. You look at the political environment, how would it change? You look at economic, and then you look at S, socio-cultural. What's going on? Are people's attitude changing?
Before I came to LBS, we do a lot, but we're a little bit casual about how we do it because we have our daily jobs. So what we do is to commit the little extra time that we have. With the training I've gone through, I know that there's a lot more that I can do because the more structured and organized the charity is, the bigger the impact, and that's what we are after.
The kind of feedback we've gotten so far shows that they have actually improved in terms of having good organizational structures and processes. Many of them now understand what's expected of them, how they can engage with various stakeholders, how they can render better service to the private sector and their partners.
So prior to coming to the NPLM program in Lagos Business School last year, one of the major problems we had was structure was a bit of problem because this was our first entrepreneurial experience. I'm a co-founder, I have a co-founder as well, and we had not really had this core knowledge of how corporate structure worked, especially for social enterprises. And coming down here, we could see how we could outrightly merge our focus on impact with our focus to be sustainable and make profits, and at the same time create a good structure around that.
I used to think like money was my challenge, so if I could get there and learn how to write for brands and and have more money, it would help. But then I came and it was like somebody was selling my story. Every facilitator who came is as if they x-rayed me, they opened me up and they were showing my challenge. Like, this is what you're doing wrong. This is how you ought to do it.
I want to say a big thank you to Ford Foundation for supporting this program and to Lagos Business School for the quality of the faculty they put together and even the content that we have been able to learn from. I'm sure that going back to my organization, a whole lot of things is going to change. And I'm sure that this program will really bring about significant transformation in the organization that I lead.
The finest quote I've seen is that non-profits think like non-profits. That's the problem. And that really is the problem. So now I'm thinking with a business mind. I'm following my heart to do what my heart wants in terms of making people happy. But then there's a business aspect of it. So we are transiting from an NGO to a social enterprise, because if we look at it as a business, if we work towards a sustainable future, it will be to the advantage of both the beneficiaries and the donors. So sustainability is something that has been ringing in my mind since I came here.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the International Sustainability Conference 2021. In case you did not know, this conference started in 2014, and many years down the line, we still continue to have impactful engagement that would better our worlds. And yes, the theme is maximizing global trade for sustainable development. We've had amazing speakers from the first day till this time, and I'm very sure that before the end of today, again, we will all attest to the fact that great values were shared on this platform. We're going to move on to the next case presentation. Remember to continue to engage and collaborate using the comment section to talk to someone or introduce yourself to someone. And also do not learn alone. Feel free to invite your friends, your colleagues to this conference before it finally wraps up at 2 p.m. All right, the case presentation next is on bridging the inequality gap in healthcare, the case of Coca-Cola's Safe Birth Initiative. And to help us with this presentation, we have a speaker already prepared to impact, and he is Nwemeka Onyemelukwe, Director, Public Affairs, Communications, and Sustainability, the Coca-Cola Company, Nigeria. You're very much welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here with these great minds. Please let me know if you are able to see my screen.
Very well, we can.
Okay. So good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you're calling in from. My name is Amaka Onyemelukwe, has been introduced. I'm the Director for Public Affairs, Communications and Sustainability for Coca-Cola here in Nigeria. So I know a lot of people know our company as a company in terms of the Coke brand, but we used to say that we are so much more. We believe in making a difference. The topic of today is actually how we can bridging the inequality gap in healthcare system using the Coca-Cola Safe Birth Initiative as a case study. So first of all, I would like to take you through what our purpose as a company is. And for us, it's about to refresh the world and make a difference. So in terms of creating loved brands, we pride ourselves of crafting meaningful brands or the choice of drinks that people love that refresh them in mind and body. But a lot also has been spoken here today. And of course, everybody knows that sustainability is not only what we do in terms of nice to have, but it sits right in the center of our business strategy. Because for every brand that we create, sustainability has to sit in the center of our strategy. So it has to be done sustainably, not just to create the love brands for a better shared future. So we use our brand leadership as a company to be part of the solution to achieve positive change in the world and to build a more sustainable future. We are 135 years old brand, and we recognize the leadership that we bring to the table in ensuring that we create solutions that enables us to build a sustainable world. So our approach to sustainable development is simply by partnership. So the SDG Goal 17 is very integral and very important to us as a brand. So we believe in partnership for impacts because we recognize the fact that no one brand or no one company can actually do it alone. Therefore, we are constantly innovating with industry, government, and civil societies to create sustainable solutions in over 200 countries of the world where we operate as a business. And that takes us to the heart of the sustainability pillars we have as a company. So I would like to just give you an overview of where we focus here in Nigeria and also in Africa. Is that well-being is top priority for our company, and we constantly seek solutions. And that was what bettered the topic of today, which is our Safe Birth Initiative. And simply, it is just a slogan, or our core objective is that we need to bring the mom and baby home alive. And this is a partnership, being part of the private sector to the president on SDGs, a partnership that was born right from the SDG office. And I see the Honorable Princess the SDG office in terms of the partnership that she played, or the strategic direction she played to make sure that this project was brought to life. Then another focus area for us as an organization is actually women. Then we have water, to ensure that, of course, that we have portable access to water and safe sanitation for a lot of people. We also know the impact this is also playing in terms of managing COVID. And of course, waste, and most importantly, the youths. Africa has been said to have a teeming youth population. Nigeria has over 70% of its population for youths, and this is an area that we're paying attention very critically. As regards the topic in terms of our case study and our learnings from what we have seen from Safe Birth Initiative. So for Safe Birth is simply an intervention that is focused on making sure that we have our mothers and newborn come home alive from the theaters. And this is a golden triangle partnership that was actually have three key stakeholder players: the government, through the Office of the Senior Special Assistant to the President on SDGs, the Federal Ministry of Health, because they are primarily responsible for these healthcare centers, and an international NGO known as MedShare, who is the leading NGO that is coordinating all the equipment across the world, and especially in America, to leverage their impact and global leadership to ship this equipment down to Nigeria to equip our healthcare centers. So, and then we have a total of 15 hospitals to be impacted under this initiative. As of today, 10 of it has been pre-assessed, and the equipment have been delivered across these 10 hospitals and 5 additional to go. We actually say that in Africa, or in Nigeria specifically, pregnancy offers one of the life's most joyful expectations. Of course, when a family, or when a new couple sets out to get married, we know that there's a lot of expectations from every part of the family. But sadly, sadly, some ends in very tragic and anguish way for thousands of families in Nigeria and sub-Saharan Africa. If you look at the map here, or the data, you see that for sub-Saharan Africa, the mortality rates is quite high, especially both on the maternal and the infant mortality side. And if you look at on my right-hand side, you will see that the whole of sub-Saharan Africa is actually colored amber or red, with Nigeria actually sitting at above 100% live birth. And this is something that is quite worrisome for everybody that is on this call, and for us as an organization. And further into this data, you will see that the global statistics have actually placed Nigeria as the 3rd most dangerous country to have a child or to be born. And this was the data that we looked at together with the SDG office, and we felt that it was very important that we take our brand leadership to be able to provide strategic solution to this particular top priority case. And as at the time we started this project, little did we know that the COVID was actually looking around the corner, because strengthening these hospitals have actually gone beyond maternal and infant mortality, because we see firsthand how it has prepared the tertiary institutions to be able to manage the COVID situation at the onset of COVID. And really, the challenge is actually not that is only prevalent in rural communities. You also see that it actually cuts across every social class. Of course, if you look at the right-hand side, you will see that for even both the educated and the higher income class of people, maternal and child mortality is something that actually gives a lot of, that is actually still very prevalent in Nigeria specifically. We have a statistics from the Nigerian government data that 53,000 women die each year from childbirth-related complications. A total of 240,000 newborns also die in the first 28 days of life. This is excluding 300,000 stillbirths. And this data is actually long overdue because we have more updated information from UNICEF that actually places the the maternal deaths at 814 per 1,000 live births. And these are actually the one that has been captured by the statistics. We are aware that a lot of them are also outside of the statistics because of access to equitable healthcare in some of these remote areas. And really, looking at the statistics actually gave birth to what we call today the maternal newborn mortality reductions. It's part of course, a priority for the SDG office. And sitting and interacting with them as Safe Birth Initiative was actually crafted to primarily address and see how the maternal deaths and newborn deaths can be reduced across geographic locations. And that was how the Safe Birth Initiative, which is a golden triangle, was actually born. If you look at the triangle, you will see that government is a key facilitation and guidance, because we believe that the hospitals are under their care, they have the statistics, they have the data. The challenge we have seen is that they lack the adequate financing to be able to intervene in such a situation that those centers can be upgraded with life-saving equipment that would give access to both the poor and the middle class in the society. And that was where we felt that using a global business network, we're able to network with an international organization to source this medical equipment across Europe and America to be able to bridge the gap here in Nigeria. And that is how MedShare and the partnership was born in Nigeria. And looking at the statistics, so we also felt that this program shouldn't actually address what we think was the problem, but we had to actually look at data-driven challenges so that we will be sure that we are addressing the right situation. So there was a pre-assessment that was done across all the hospitals that was on this program. Visiting them and having a serious interaction with both the hospital management and across people that are actually in the ward, giving first-hand care to patients. We wanted to understand where the challenges lie. And of course, it was discovered that really, that 80% of most of the deaths that are being recorded at their facilities are indeed preventable. And that was how we believe that the intervention was very apt, and we addressed the prematurity rates. A lot of data was coming from hemorrhage, for example, for maternal mortality, other induced hypertension, for example, other induced complications that come as a result of childbirth. And for the newborn cases, a lot was coming from sepsis. The most prevalent in terms of 31% was actually premature birth. And of course, if you have taken a walk in the north, you will understand that they have a lot of low birth babies in that part of the country. And that was really what we ensured that the program was supposed to address. Apologies. So how this particular slide actually talks in terms of the 3 key pillars the Safe Birth Initiative had set out to address. And the very first pillar was to equip, because we discovered that there was a wide gap. An average woman that comes in gets, for example, is given a list to go to a neighboring assessment center to do an ultrasound, for example. Sometimes they have to go back because they don't have the money to pay for those ultrasound. So their basic life-saving equipment, if instituted in those hospitals, will come very handy at a very reduced cost for these expectant mothers. So we make sure that all the life-saving equipment, from ultrasound machine to anesthesia machine that is needed during surgery, and up to as low as incubators, we also discovered a lot of knowledge gaps. In fact, I personally was part of the pre-assessment team, and I learned, and my eyes was open to the knowledge gap and also the training that is required, both from the biomedical engineers that are on site. Some of the hospitals do not even have a valuable or a trained biomedical engineer that actually takes care of this equipment. And some that did have, did not have the prerequisite training to be able to either maintain or keep the equipment running. And we then understood that there has to be an extensive training for the biomedical engineers that would ensure that the lifespan of the product, of the equipment is actually maintained and they have 100% uptime. And what was also very phenomenal, I don't know how many of us that lives in Nigeria that have taken a trip to Federal Medical Center Ibutemeta, as at the time the hospital was being upgraded, we discovered that a lot of civil work needed to be done. And the CMDs of this hospital took it on. And I can tell you that 2 years down the line, going to that hospital, you can't imagine the kind of environment you see when you enter the hospital, because it is actually almost equivalent to what you see in top grade private hospitals that you see. And what we have seen is that, of course, it made sure that access to the vulnerable was reduced to the barest minimum, so that a woman that shows up, for example, to put to birth, does not have a long list of items she needs to go and procure, because not only did the life-saving equipment was addressed, they got a lot of supplies that actually equipped them to ensure that care is provided to that class of people at a very reduced rate, so that more of them could come. Because we also understood that sometimes when the women show up, they end up going back because they don't have the money to buy all the list of equipment that or supplies that is actually prescribed for them. And then another critical element that we had on the project was repairs. Most of the hospitals had a lot of abandoned equipment because either when they break down, there was not adequate knowledge for the biomedical engineers to repair the equipment. They get them abandoned by the corridors or their stores. So what we did was to ensure that we did an assessment on every equipment that was on site that they had, bought enough parts. Some we ordered from outside the country, some we sourced locally, and worked with their biomedical technicians to be able to repair the existing equipment that they had, and then make sure that there was adequate knowledge transfer that then allowed the local biomedical engineers more equipped to be able to handle their own equipment, and of course, the equipment that was procured under the SBI intervention. And in fact, 2 years or 3 years for those people that had actually received from the onset of the hospital, they are also linked to our technical experts in the US. They have a group where they do update courses and they are able to troubleshoot, to also repair if they encounter further difficulties. So it was a working model that we have seen that actually allowed them to grow in their various fields. And also the repair aspect had neighboring hospitals who were also not beneficiaries. For example, by the time they are intervening in Lagos, we have all the tertiary hospitals, we ask them to send in their technicians or biomedical engineers to be part of that training. And what that has done for them is that there is a lot of collaboration within the hospitals that have seen them actually up their care across various locations. And really, this is just to show you, I'll give you an idea of the spread, because we reckon the fact that not only the prevalence of maternal and neonatal health care is really not prevalent only in, for example, in the South and the North. Yes, the data has it that some locations of the country has more need, but then we were able to make sure that we have a significant spread across the countries. Like I said before, COVID has also impacted on the timeline of delivering all the whole projects. We have 5 outstanding new hospitals to also be pre-assessed. But for all the hospitals that have benefited, the testimonies from them in terms of impact it has done to their different hospitals and how they are able to intervene firsthand. We've had, and the project also is such that during the needs assessment, we saw that the gap that sometimes you must have experts. We have a typical case of a Port Harcourt teaching hospital where they have experts that could do open heart surgery, but they don't have, the only equipment they have for the open heart surgery has broken down. And we were able to freight 2 open heart surgery machines to that hospital, because we recognize there are some children that are born or neonates and they have the need to actually undergo open heart surgery. So first of all is that if you have technical experts and the technology or the equipment are missing, there is no how the hospitals can actually perform those kind of surgeries. And these are something that was an eye-opener to us, because these hospitals are tertiary hospitals, they are referral centers, but the availability of those life-saving equipment was very key on how they are able to intervene and deliver first-hand care, especially to the low-income people. And really, that is where the issue of equitable healthcare access lies, because we recognize that an average person or a low-income woman, the first point of call or where they go, apart from the healthcare centers, and when they have complications, are actually these teaching hospitals. And equipping them and giving them the requisite equipment they need to be able to intervene was very critical on how we are able to bridge that gap in healthcare system. And really, this is an overview of really what the approximate value of the SBI delivered. So when we talk about global companies and the power that we have to be able to command sustainable development, I can tell you that it was a $1 million investment from the Coca-Cola company, but we got equipment valued at $10.8 million. And how did this happen? So in a lot of, some of the equipment were not, were sourced from manufacturers, where in the US, where probably a new, if you are very used to cars, where there is a new update, probably as little as probably putting a charging spot on a bed. Those equipment are phased out and they try to put them away or put them aside. So the NGO, international NGO we are working with, was able to, from Philips to different manufacturers, they have access to different manufacturers who were able to donate. Some of them donated, but then they needed freighting costs to be able to ship them to places in Africa. And that's how we got an equipment value up to $10.8 million into the country to be able to address some of this. And this is really an approximate value when we did the calculation of 1.3% of 2017 national healthcare budget in Nigeria. And then we made sure that the equipment was focused on more of 70% life-saving, and 30% of it was on medical consumables. And these medical consumables, we couldn't imagine the kind of leverage it gave the hospitals at the onset of COVID, because at that time, gloves to PPEs was a big challenge, but they had it in abundance to be able to tackle the cases that they were seeing. And the repair aspect of the project is still ongoing. And the values of the repair, we are trying to put together the reactivated equipment that we have seen across these hospitals. And in fact, I give you an example of what has happened in Owerri, where we have all the neighboring hospitals actually transporting their broken down equipment to the center so that the team that came down will be able to work on that. So it was actually a very phenomenal project that do not only touch based on the beneficiary hospital, but it was able to translate across the region to be able to create great impact. And some of the impact highlights we have seen on the project is actually an increased awareness of healthy living. There's a reduction in cost of maternal neonatal care in the hospitals. And especially the CMDs made it a personal commitment and an open commitment to ensure that the most vulnerable are also beneficiaries. We have classical examples of a woman that had a quadruplet in Abuja, had to be released free of charge because of the intervention. And there are many more personal testimonies and examples that came out of this project. And there has been significant reduction in maternal, newborn, and mortality rates in the public hospitals. Ministry of Health is still the custodian of the data in terms of making sure that they validate the actual numbers in real-time figures. And this level of study is still ongoing. And there has been high productivity and empowered by a medical team. In fact, just to give an example, we have seen the biomedical team be more equipped now that they are training the younger ones that are coming behind. Because the way the project is programmed is that we will need to create or a pool of biomedical seasoned engineers that is able to carry on with the project after the project delivery date, therefore creating a sustainability around the project so that we ensure that Nigeria has a crop of quality biomedical engineers that will be able to manage whether this equipment that we're donating or much more that can be donated from other more parties. And at the end of the day, we also have seen improved service delivery care because of the number of healthcare professionals that has also been trained. We saw a over 30 years practicing pediatrician who told us that the sensor that actually monitors the baby for the incubator, he wasn't aware that that sensor needed to be placed on the body of the baby so that he can monitor the temperature. Normally they put it outside. And sometimes that's how some neonates are lost because either the incubator goes too high, the temperature goes too high, and the baby sometimes gets uncomfortable and they don't know what had killed the baby, or because they were not really fully aware, even the nurses that were in this room. So there was a massive training of the end users as well, not just the biomedical technicians, the end users, the nurses, the direct healthcare givers that actually take care of this equipment had a robust training that enables them to have adequate access on how to use the equipment that were actually donated. And so these are some of the impact highlights that we have recorded on the project. The project is still ongoing. Some of the northern states, because of the high insecurity in the areas, we have been unable to complete that. But in the coming year, we are fully confident with COVID easing off. We hope that those states will be fully delivered in 2022. But that's not to say that a lot of impact neighboring states, because some of these hospitals are actually serving neighboring states. Imo can serve as far as long Abia State and the neighboring states across them. So we've seen a lot of states being impacted on the project. More than 18,000 babies and mothers have actually had safe deliveries and increased their number of people that come to the hospitals, because there was also a part of advocacy that happened in the communities so that women can then understand that when they go to these teaching hospitals, they're able to get better healthcare at a very reduced prices and not the usual high prices that they will usually get because of the hospital spending so much money to procure this equipment, or sometimes they outsource them. So you see the laboratories inside the hospitals providing they're privatized, or this particular equipment belongs to the hospitals and are maintained by the hospitals, thereby making them make it available to people that need them at little or no cost. And we've seen thousands of families being impacted on the project. And how has this really bridged the inequality gap in healthcare system that we've seen? So for us, the Safe Bet Initiative, it's one flagship project that was not only launched in Nigeria, but also in Cote d'Ivoire. And in Nigeria, we have seen that the quality healthcare can be accessible and affordable to thousands of patients and families. And then we also have seen, or for us as a company, we want to make sure that quality healthcare is only not meant for the rich. We have seen these hospitals equipped with the kind of equipment you see in first-hand private clinics. And now the poor and the vulnerable can have access to the same quality service. And of course, strengthening the public health system for us is a collective responsibility. And with this conference, what we are actually sharing this knowledge is to actually make sure to tell everyone that no one actor. I experienced it firsthand. Yes, it's just 15 hospitals, but we have thousands of hospitals that can actually provide healthcare system to 200 million Nigerians. And COVID has also shown us that if we don't strengthen our healthcare system, even everyone would actually see the impact. And what we are saying that there needs to be a serious interaction, collaboration between the government and the non-state actors, because it's very critical and integral to delivering quality healthcare system that would actually touch base on both health and social care. We therefore call on more partners to actually look into the healthcare system. And I think if there are one thing that COVID has taught us, not just in the area of maternal and neonatal death, healthcare, we believe that if our public health systems are not strengthened, we're just sitting on a time bomb with our population continue to increase, and with people not having access to proper healthcare system, we will simply not be building the kind of sustainable communities that we would like to see as a country. So for us, it's a call to action for more people to look into this area, to be able to make sure that we have a strong and robust healthcare system that creates equitable access to thousands of people. And that would be my last slide. And I hope this has actually thrown more light to the issues that we have in our healthcare system and how we can make it more equitable for the vulnerable population. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much, Amaka, for that very beautiful presentation. If there's one thing that I would definitely amaran or reiterate from your presentation, it is the fact that we all have a role to play in all of this. If we're going to strengthen our healthcare, we need to do the work, as a people, collective responsibility, and collaborate as much as possible to get results. Thank you very, very much. We have some questions for you. I would quickly run through those questions. Please, if you have a question, make use of the Q&A box just somewhere there on your screen instead of the comment box so that we don't mix up the live interaction with your question. But this one I see here says, are you currently looking to partner with the organizations interested or working or funding related program for the purpose of scaling or reaching more rural areas? Do you want to react to that?
Yeah, definitely. So we are open to partnerships, either on the project or on another one, because this particular one is focused on tertiary healthcare system. So when we talk about the rural areas, we then talk about the primary healthcare system in focus. We have another project that actually addresses that aspect of the project, but it's something that we are open to partnership, and we are happy to see the areas that the organizations are looking into, so that we can see how best that can be done.
All right, thank you. Moving on to the next question. This says, how many beneficiaries have benefited from the Safe Best initiative?
Yeah. So the numbers are, of course, keep growing. As at the last validation that we did, we have 18,000 mothers and babies that have actually passed through or used the different facilities that have been provided across 8 federal health institutions. We have over 2,200 health workers and biomedical engineers trained. And definitely, these are some of the statistics that we have. We reckon the fact that we don't want to, those numbers grow every day, but until we do a validation, we have a reservation of throwing out those numbers.
All right. Thank you very much. Goyega Lauren Femi says, thank you, Amaka. Please, have you completed or conducted assessment of hospitals in Ekiti State? If not, I would like to say that the specialist hospital in Kere, Ekiti is open to be assessed for this initiative. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I just want to put a caveat there. So these hospitals, we are actually from the data from that were nominated from the Federal Ministry of Health. It is not, we don't decide where to go. They have the statistics. The 10 beneficiary hospitals that we have done was nominated by them. The 5 are still outstanding. We'll keep that in mind as we engage with the Federal Ministry of Health and SDG office for the nomination of the outstanding 5. We do hope that your hospital would be part of it. But just know that there are some statistics they look at before the hospitals are nominated. Thank you.
Thank you. Titus says, I acknowledge the good work that Coca-Cola is doing. Please, what maintenance plan do you have in place to ensure these infrastructures are sustainable?
Yeah, I think I touched base on that when I was talking. Thank you for that question, actually. It's something very critical. So the major sustainability for us is to see that these equipments are actually have 100% uptime, if possible. Therefore, that's why the training aspect was very critical. We didn't just equip, we made sure that we trained the biomedical engineers, the technicians in these hospitals so that they can understand fully how to manage and be able to maintain the hospitals. They also we have set up also a group where they are able to source parts to be able to replace them. And we also connect them with our technical partners that provide routine update courses for them. And they have access to peer trainings as well, so that they are able to touch base and leverage on each other's strengths to ensure that the hospitals and the equipment are maintained under the guidance of our technical partners, Medshare International. So that's in a nutshell. Yep.
All right, great. I have this one. My mother used the services of midwives for home birth of her last 4 children. Her experience was much better than that of the 4 older children she had in the hospital. Does this initiative include safe home birth? That's from Winifred Ireyi.
Sorry, come again. I didn't get the question.
The question basically says, does this initiative include safe home birth?
Safe
home birth, giving birth at home.
Oh, no. It doesn't actually. It doesn't. Like I said, it's targeted at the tertiary centers, meaning that these things are referral hospitals, and that's why it focused on huge equipment support. Because at the primary care level, a woman that doesn't have complications would actually probably get care and help. But again, for me is home birth. I kind of still struggle whether this is something that we should still encourage. At the very least is that they should actually go to the primary healthcare centers that are available in the communities. But I also am not ignorant. There are some communities that probably have maybe little or nothing in their communities, but at least the primary healthcare centers, I believe a lot of work is going on in that side. But this is focused on referral centers, not.
Okay, great. All right, great. The final question we're going to take, Ayotunde Alimi says, is the biomedical engineering training open to other interested young person or aimed at only bridging the technical gap in the hospitals?
So majorly it's bridging the technical gaps in the hospitals, but if I can get you can private chat me. So it's open to, so if they come in and they probably go to the next center, we show it open to people that are not in that hospital to also come and benefit. But majorly it is tailored, very practical driven, tailored at really having practical experiences, repairing firsthand the equipment that they have, and also teaching them how they would make sure that they have optimal knowledge of every equipment. So it's open to the public when they go to a particular location, but definitely someone who already is in practice and understands, has a basic knowledge of biomedical engineering. It's not a school.
Okay, thank you so much. That would be all for now. I know that there are some questions in the comment section asking for contact, for partnership and all of that. I do hope that we'll be able to share that. Maybe you just go into the section to see some of those things if you would want to respond to them personally. But thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, do you want to please put your hands together for Wamaka for that beautiful presentation again? Thank you. All right, while we get that done, we are now going to have very quickly a video interlude. And after that, we'll come for the panel discussion. Thank you.
Why I decided to come to Lagos Business School is because it offers an extraordinary learning experience for anyone who is keen on improving all-round quality as a manager.
Lagos Business School is seen as that prestige school that could afford me in terms of network, in terms of quality of class participants that I was going to meet, in terms of even the teaching itself.
At this stage of my career, I had to develop more skills to be able to perform properly in the office that I've been promoted to. And there was no better place for me to gain such valuable skills than Lagos Business School.
I believe that it would give me an added advantage, a competitive added advantage in my career. And I have realized that it would also help in my personal growth.
Things that I've learned here in terms of formulating strategy, getting people's buy-in for you to implement strategy. You don't need everybody's consensus. You don't need consensus to be able to, move on with the strategy. How do you monitor the strategy?
Cost accounting, financial management have been revealing courses for me during this period. And I think that it has opened a side of, my experience, my knowledge, that I know would be very impactful in making the changes I need in my organization.
Communication. How you say some things, when you say some things would go a very, very long way. Communication is key for me. That I would be taking back to my company. I have learned that there are different leadership styles. There is no one-way street to leadership. I have learned that a combination of people can come together and still achieve a certain goal.
And I understand how to evaluate your business from a cost perspective. I have better understanding of cost management, I have better understanding of financial management, everything I was lacking before I came here, And then ability to make difficult decisions, was a challenge. But now I evaluate the facts, I analyze the facts, and decision making is almost it's easy sort of now.
In the next few years, I am confident that with the knowledge and resources that I have now learned from Lagos Business School, I can confidently start my own business and change the world in my own little way.
I see myself taking charge of the business, as a general manager, and these are the skills one needs to be able to manage a business, to see from different angles and make strategic decisions.
It would impact my career in the sense that I know who I am better now, and I'm ready to interact with the different kinds of people that I will eventually come across as I climb the ladder. Because again, as they say, the higher you go, the thinner the air. So I believe I'm ready for that. I'm ready for the next step.
My advice for my peers who are on the fence about whether to come to Lagos Business School or not, I would tell them that they should take this chance. Lagos Business School offers a fantastic learning experience, and there's a chance that once they come here, they would probably come again.
I would recommend LBS to my peers, to my subordinates, and even to my leaders, to the people that I report to. There's something in it for everybody at different levels, vertically and horizontally.
The SMP program is all-encompassing. It's an awesome experience. There's theory, there's more practical. It's the values you learn from here are invaluable. It's awesome. So those that are still sitting on the fence, I would say no. Just take the decision and come right away. What you gain from here will impact your life for a very long time. And it will make a tremendous difference in the way you see things, in the way you approach things. And even, for me especially, my ethical values now have changed, because the way I see ethics, the way I used to look at it before, has changed totally. So it's really an awesome experience.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. And yes, I trust that you're getting value from this conference. A lot has been said so far, and we're going to keep up with the information, ensure that you have your notepad, jot as much as you can, and of course, share the information with people across board on social media or in your circle, because again, this is not something that we want to keep in-house. We want to spread it as much as possible to ensure that we all get the same results at the end of the day. So moving on to the panel discussion, the first for today, and the topic is bridging the inequality gap in education, the role of public-private partnerships. I'm just going to introduce the panelists as well as the moderator for the session before I hand over. The first panelist to join us for this session is Folusho Badamoshi, the Executive Director, Nigeria Junior Achievement Africa. If you're here, good morning. Okay, I think I see you.
Good morning.
Yes, good morning. Thank you for joining us. Also joining this session is the Managing Director of the Education Partnership Center, Dr. Mutukwe Adefeso Olateju. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
All right then. All right, and then we also have Mr. Kayode Jegede, who is the Project Coordinator, Nigeria. Okay, now I would want Mr. Kayode to sound this, because I know it's a German German organization. It is Nachustifong Machinuba. I hope I got that correctly. And also the VDMA Technical Training Program. Mr. Kayode Jegede, good morning.
Good morning.
Do you want to sound the name of the organization for us? I know it's German.
Nachustifong Machinuba. It's what you pronounce is close enough. But in Nigeria, we just call it NWS because the pronunciation is difficult for English speakers.
Oh, right. Thank you so much for clarifying that. All right, I also have on this panel session, Victoria Ndi Waduka, who is the Corporate Communications and Public Affairs Manager, Nestle Nigeria. You're very much welcome to this session. And to the moderator, I will now be handing over to the moderator, who is the Human Resources, Sustainability and Education Expert and affiliate, Lagos Business School Sustainability Center, Mr. Yomi Faweimi. Good morning. Over to you.
Okay. Good morning. Thank you very much. Thank you very especially for the kind introductions. Thanks to the other panelists. Want to welcome you and everybody here. It's a privilege to serve as a moderator for this session. Just to confirm, can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Oh, great. Okay, thanks. Thanks. Okay. All right. So this is a panel discussion. Our goal is to discuss the topic. I'll just read it as stated: is bridging the inequality gap in Nigeria, the role of private-public partnership, and I want to welcome everybody to this session. I hope it's a rewarding session. I also were able to do justice to the topic and get value for you at the end of the day. At the end of the day, our goal will be to ensure we have a robust discussion and we come up with a couple of action items that we can all work with. The program Compare has kindly introduced everyone, so I'm not going to do that any longer. In the interest of saving time, we just have 1 hour for this session, so let's be efficient. So just as a way of introducing the topic, I mean, if you check the topic again, it's building the inequality gap in Nigeria. Sorry, building the inequality gap in education in Nigeria, the role of public-private partnership. I mean, so it's about a couple of key concepts in that subtopic. There is the question of the inequality, and of course, arising from that is inequality gap. There's also the question, and it's not just inequality, it's inequality specific to education, and then talks about the inequality gap, and then talks about the potential to use public-private partnership. You know, one of the richest men in the world, Warren Buffett, always talks about the lottery of the bats, where he argues that quite a number of people are rich or successful, educated today just because of a lottery they won, and they didn't compete for the lottery. They just got it by chance. I mean, they were born into the right place, into the right family, in the right country, and that made a lot of difference. You know, every time I hear Warren Buffett says that, I always tell him that you actually don't have you have not come to the lab where that is demonstrated, and that is Nigeria. If you check all the statistics about anything related to education in Nigeria, you are more likely to not be educated just because of where you are born. I mean, so we, for example, have data that shows that between men and women, or males and females do not get the same advantage of men. So it's just the fact that you are born as a girl takes you at disadvantage. Between the northern part of Nigeria and the southern part of Nigeria, if you are born in the southern part of Nigeria, you are likely to get educated much more than someone in the northern part of Nigeria. Now, if you are born in the north or southern side, if you were born in the urban center in Nigeria, you're likely to get better education than if you are born in the rural area. In Nigeria today, also, I let us also acknowledge and appreciate all the disabled people in our midst. It's also the International Day for Disabled People. In Nigeria, if you are disabled, you are likely not to have education. So imagine a child who is female, who was born in northern Nigeria, who was born in a rural area, and who is also disabled. That child will not likely have anything close to what the average Nigerian child will have. And that's what talks about the importance of this inequality we have in education. I mean, it's because it's very obvious in our country, and the data shows that it's a big problem. And that's and let me appreciate the organizers for thinking about this, because we need to bridge this inequality gap. There's no need for us to deceive ourselves. You know, for many of us who are elite on this call or on this conference, there's a sense in which, you know, our own children are able to go to those good public schools where things are, private school where things happen. But we know also that the majority of Nigerian children go to those public schools. And we know, based on the fact that you attended a public school, when I was younger, it didn't make a difference. I attended a public school and it didn't make a difference. But today, it makes a difference. And so that's a context. So the goal is, what can we do? And the organizers have identified PPPs as a tool that can help us to do that. So to set the ball rolling, I'm just going to call the first speaker, and I'm going to call on Dr. Mo, and that's the way I like to describe her, just to give us your own opening thoughts and just focus on what exactly does partnership mean to you. I hope all the speakers will be able to speak between 0 to 3 minutes so that we can have like 3 rounds of dialogue before we go. So Dr. Mo, tell us, what, in your own opinion, your own definition, what exactly is partnership?
Thank you very much, Yomi. We call Yomi Prof. Yomi, and I think that with his opening remarks, everyone's not any doubt as to why we refer to him as Prof. Yomi. Thank you very much. It's good to be here. Wonderful, wonderful speaker lineup. Excellent conference thus far. I think that I will talk about partnership very briefly within the context of my experience in the education sector. Since what we are focusing on today is a partnership within education, I sort of think about it, you know, from the lens of a few scholars, you know, who have researched, you know, public-private partnerships deeply, and try to draw out some of what I believe are the fundamental principles that govern any sort of partnership, you know, in the education sector. I think the first thing to say really is that, you know, partnership is across a broad continuum. And some very good work was done by Patrinos et al., looking at what they refer to as the PPP continuum. So looking at, for example, low PPP context, ranging all the way to high PPP context. And so, for example, where you have a situation where you don't have any private provision of schools, then you have a low PPP context. And where you have, for example, subsidies to private schools, or contracts with private schools to supply some component of education, then you have emerging and moderate, you know, partnerships. But then when you have, you know, the engaged aspect or the engaged end, you know, partnership, or even the more tight partnership dimension, which is really around the context where you have, you know, we talk about education vouchers. We talk about where per pupil funding and allocation follows each child, whether they choose to be in a public school or a private school. We can estimate how much goes to them, and that money can follow them from one type of school to another kind of school. So it's a very broad spectrum when we talk about partnership. But I think the critical thing is really around what sort of characteristics, you know, define partnerships. And I'll draw on the work of a few scholars. Bouvard, I love what he says about PPPs being working arrangements And these working arrangements are based on like a mutual commitment. And this mutual commitment between partners is above and that which is implied in any contract. And that is significant because when we think about even the most stringent forms of partnership, we think about legally binding and we think about contracts. And Bovaert says it is important that partnership is looked at as a commitment to making a change that goes even beyond that which is contractually implied. I also like very much the thoughts that are shared by Hans and Joop. They talk about sharing of risks and resources. And this is an important context because if you come to the table as partners, then there is an understanding that there are risks to this partnership and there are also rewards to this partnership and they must be shared. I think that thought is further extended by Laroque, who then says, look, it is important that we first of all in a partnership clearly define what we mean by this partnership. And we must also appropriately allocate the resources, the risks, and the rewards. And so these concepts of mutual commitment that goes even beyond that which is legally implied, of identifying risks and resources, and sharing those risks and resources, and finally of drawing on the expertise of each partner, for me, form the critical foundations upon which we build partnership. And so when we have all these inputs, we can begin to talk about a productive partnership in the education sector. Prof?
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks, Dr. Mo. Great introduction. I'm not going to make any comments on that. So let me ask Felicia to weigh in at this point. So what do you describe as partnership in education? What is partnership in education?
All right. Good morning, everyone. Dr. Mo had such a great opener. I just have to give her some great props for that because she said so many things that were on my mind. Hi, Dr. Mo, and hi, everybody on the panel. It's a real pleasure to be here. So when I think about partnerships, I mean, I think about them very much in line with what she just said. You know, it's really all about all of us bringing our various strengths to the table to make magic happen in this sector. As we know, I mean, in Nigeria, we've got over 70% of youth in our population, majority of which are between the ages of 0 and 14. And what I have had the experience of, you know, having since being at junior achievement for the past year is seeing the absolute innovation, creativity, efficiency, and things that happen when we all come together to partner, right? So you're having people coming together with all of their different, you know, value adding propositions, with all of their different strengths, and we're all bringing it all to the table. Now, partnership with government especially is extremely important because as Prof, according to what Dr. Moon said, Prof is called, I think it's Prof, right? Prof Yomi said during his opener, we know that majority of the population in this part of the world are in public schools. And so partnership with government is extremely important. And so for me, it's really about us being extremely intentional in coming together with the government and all the different organizations with all our different strengths, all the different value that we add, and bringing all that together to really make a great change in the sector. Thank you.
Thank you, Felicia. Thanks. Great contribution. Okay, can I call on Kyle De Jagede to tell us what is partnership in education from your point of view?
Thank you very much. I'd like to start by asking some questions. You said, Mr. Professor Yomi, you said you attended a public school. I did the same. Primary school, secondary school, university, all in Nigeria were public. And I got good education. But I couldn't do that for my children. What went wrong? Where did we miss it? Obviously, there was something that existed before in terms of the elements that made public-private partnership work. For example, an immediate one that I can pick out is that the secondary school I attended was owned by the missionaries, like happened in the 70s and 60s before them. Most secondary schools were set up by churches, right? And they functioned very well. But the government woke up one day and said, we will take over all of them. Whereas the government does not have the resources to run them. Okay? Now, over the last few years, we've seen some governments trying to give back the churches, the schools back to the churches. And mind you, the churches have, and other religious organizations have a lot of money. Okay, so that's number one. I raised another question. In the 70s, I grew up as a young man in primary, secondary school, seeing a Nigeria that was industrializing and was on the path to industrialization. I lived in Ikeja, and you know, a lot of the areas of Ikeja where I lived has factories that were making things. We actually made things, and the biggest businessmen in those days were industrialists, right? Just to recall a few of the things we made vehicle tires from rubber. We made vehicle windscreens. We made clothes. We had a lot of functional textile companies. We made standing fans and ceiling fans and car batteries. And then we had car assembly plants like Volkswagen, Peugeot, and some truck plants. I think there was a truck plant in the East. Now, these are just examples. We made so many other things. Where did all of this go wrong? And those factories had skills. They had the skilled workers that serviced them, right? And those skilled workers came primarily from our trade schools and technical colleges. I recall in those days that people that went to technical colleges got jobs before they finished, because the likes of Shell, ExxonMobil, Cadbury, and so were coming there to recruit them before they finished. Where did all this go wrong? Where did we go wrong? But more importantly, I think because this is a dialogue to action conference, and I like that phrase a lot, dialogue to action. More importantly is to ask, how do we correct it and get back on the path to industrialization and economic growth? Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Great questions and something for us to think about. Can I call on Victoria Wadoka to also share opening thoughts and also try to define partnership in education for us?
Thank you very much, and great contributions by everyone already. Just to add to that, what is partnership? Dr. Mo and Felusho have mentioned already, it's about bringing resources together. It's about being intentional, about addressing particular situations and particular gaps and solutioning them. That is what partnership brings. And Dr. Coyote mentioned a few things, thinking about the technical colleges and the trade schools and the mission schools that we had in the past. So partnership in education is something that was existing in Nigeria. And if there is a lesson that we want to learn from the fact that the government wanted to take over all the schools and manage all the schools, it's that there is a need for public-private partnership, especially when it comes to education. And, being intentional about the fact that there is a purpose for education. It's not just education in itself, but education with a purpose, with a plan. Recently we work with the LBS and other organizations, other schools, other business schools, other tertiary institutions. And the question is, when we educate our children, when we educate our young ones who form the majority of our population, how do we put them out in the market? Do they have the skills that they need for the workplace? Do they have the skills that they need for Nigeria, for the needs that we have in Nigeria? If we're talking about industrialization of the country, there is industry that is existent that knows exactly what industry needs. There is a need for that partnership to happen so that there is a transmission of the real values or the real skills that these young ones need to enter the work market. And we need the technical skills for industrialization. There is so much that can happen when we come together. So partnership in itself, public-private, is very, very critical because we bring our strengths together. We bring our needs. We start from the end. What do we need? What do these young people need at the end of the day? And then every party, the public sector, can create the framework, the policies that we need, or creates that management system that helps us to align our education plans, our education strategy to address the particular needs that we have in the environment. And I think that this is where the partnership works. This is where the private-public handshake comes in. And as we begin to do that and do it more effectively and more intentionally, then we'll begin to solution the challenges that we have currently in the education sector. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks to all the panelists for their great contribution. And I hope the dialogue can also continue in the comment box. So it's also good for us to go and start to have conversations around. So is PPPs like the silver bullet? Does it solve all the problem? And I say that from the comments of Mr. Kayode Jegede, talking about the historical perspective of education in Nigeria. And indeed, when the religious leaders and churches, but to be more precise, came with Western education, there was some form of partnership, because in many of those places where those schools were built, the land was given to the community by the community for free. So there was some form of partnership. Now, what happened in between the late 1940s and 1950s was that these churches started to make requests to the colonial leaders and asking them to provide these resources for the school. So it was the churches that started the school based on their partnership with community that provided land. And then those churches started to reach out to the government and initiated. So the first PPPs we had in Nigeria was not initiated by government. It was initiated by the social sector asking government to get involved in education, right? But what happened was that the government then gave conditions. And those conditions was a framework that led to the public takeover of those schools in the 1970s, because those conditions were stringent and negated the objectives of those churches from what they really wanted to achieve with the schools. Part of it was the fact that they needed to dilute religious instructions. Part of it was that they needed to open the schools to everyone. Right? So what that suggests is that this call for partnership by this religious institution was a disadvantage. And those that resisted this were seen to be the Puritans, and those that accepted it was those that compromised. So my next set of questions is going directed. So is this PPP a silver bullet? Does it solve a problem? Or maybe I should present it. Are there risks about going to partnership with governments? So I'm going to ask Dr. Mo to also start. Based on your experience, based on what are there risks, and will this solve all our problems in inequalities in education? Dr. Mo.
Thank you so much for that. I think that for me, the first issue is clarifying what the capability of the system is. Earlier when I've spoken about a continuum. And so we have contexts where they're very, very low partnerships and contexts where they're very, very high levels, of formal partnership. I don't engage in dialogue about, what will happen when an elephant flies, simply because elephants cannot fly. And so I won't engage in a conversation about partnership if the conditions for a partnership don't exist. Instead, I'll engage in a conversation around what sort of conditions do we need to put in place for a partnership to be established? What sort of conditions do we need to put in place for the elephant to grow wings so that it can fly? I think that narrowing it down to the Nigerian context, partnerships really do have a mixed feelings, or create mixed feelings, amongst different cadres of people. When we look at the ideological basis upon which certain people advocate for pure public provision, we recognize that there is a moral high ground that they bring to the table. It is fair and it is equitable and it is just for all children, to be served by the public sector. And this is correct, and this is enshrined in many international agreements as well. When we now begin to tease out the detail, which is where the devil actually resides, what we find is that there is a difference between government being responsible for education and government providing education. And these are two distinct spheres that it's important not to conflict. And so government being responsible for education means that government, whether at the national level or at the subnational level, opens its doors to the private sector, to the religious organizations, civil society organizations to come in. In fact, some scholars have done quite a bit of research in dimensioning the components, of partnership, and some talk about, public funding and private management. Other talk about, private funding and public management. And of course, the most desirable, space to dwell in is that which sees you publicly funding education but privately managing it. So there is a pragmatism that is required to shift you from the ideological perspective of public sector needing to provide education to public sector being responsible for the provision of education. And I think that that space, that conversion space, is where we need to really focus a lot of our energies, because that conversion space is not just about the mindset. It's not just about the ideological mindset. I went to a public school, therefore every child should go to a public school. That's nice, but that's a mindset. We have to think about the system's readiness to absorb children in the public sector. And this is where the conversations with provision, management become pertinent. In recent years, there has been a clamor, for old boys and old girls associations of unity schools to come in and quote unquote take over the management of their schools. And once those conversations start, we realize it's not quite as easy to do so as we might ideologically want to do, simply because public schools reside in a public system. And for you to have the sort of partnership that we are looking for, you need to be able to have, for example, strong public finance admin systems. We need to be able to understand exactly how much is being spent in education. How much does it cost to educate one Nigerian child from primary level all the way to tertiary level? That kind of data is critical if we are going to have the sort of partnership that we are desiring, which I believe is not the low level of partnership, but the more advanced level where we have the contractual arrangements, and the contractual arrangements that even go beyond contractual arrangements to morally guided contractual arrangements. So can PPPs resolve issues? Of course, but like I said, I won't engage in that conversation simply because we don't have the parameters for those kinds of partnerships. And I think I would rather spend a lot of time thinking through how we get to those parameters so that we can then begin to institutionalize public-private partnerships.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Andrew. Andrew said PPP could be a risk based on the kind of people and resources involved. Thanks, Dr. Mo, for your response. And thanks, Andrew, for contributing that. Okay, so let me call on Mr. Jegede to help us here. If we're selling PPP as a solution, we can't sell solution without describing the risk. So I would like to ask you, are there risks in going ahead, or is PPP the only way? Is it possible for us to make one of the parties, whether it's government or private, to run solo and run solo very well? Or must we always go alongside with the public and the private sector when it comes to dealing with inequalities in education in Nigeria? Can either of them succeed without the other? And what is the risk of asking the other person to partner with the other fellow? Mr. Jegede, sir.
Thank you, sir. Well, I'll put it this way. PPP, to me, PPP is the only way to go. But I'll put it into context to say that education cannot work without the government and the private sector being equally involved. The government cannot do it alone because it's trying to raise skilled citizens that feed into the economy, which is essentially the private sector. And the private sector cannot do it alone because it's not its primary motive. So no matter the level where it belongs to on the spectrum, as Dr. Mojukwe put it, the PPP is the way to go. It has to involve both the private sector and the government. And I will use the example of Germany here. The project we are running in Nigeria, the Aliko Dangote Foundation VDMA Technical Training Program, is modeled on the German example, the German dual vocational training. And it's reputed to be one of the very best in the world, the way they train their technicians, right? Germany has enormous technical capabilities. So the president of the US, Obama, at a stage when there was the downturn in the economy, asked Merkel, why is Germany being so resilient? Why are you doing so well? And her response was that we still make things, right? They make their things in Germany. They haven't exported everything to outsource everything to China like the US did. And the secret is their dual vocational training system. And it's quite unique, and it didn't happen overnight. It took decades. The law has been in place in the 60s, and even before then, the society itself had a trade apprenticeship system that had been embedded in the psyche of the society, right? But this system is a very, very close collaboration between government and the private sector. But what their government has been wise enough to do, or I don't know whether it happened by accident or who persuaded who to do what, but they put the private sector in the lead. You run it. We will put the enabling law in place, and they did. And we'll give an oversight on what you are doing, but you run it. So the DVT system in Germany is run by the chambers of commerce, to the extent that the examinations that these young people do are conducted by the chambers of commerce. And our 6334 system was an idea to move in this direction, but it wasn't well implemented. Where, when after you've done your junior secondary school, you are then free to choose whether you want to go the vocational line or the academic line. So in Germany, you can go the vocational line, and then you immediately start to go to school and work at the same time, and you are placed on a salary, right? And when you finish and get a certificate from the chamber, this is recognized anywhere in Germany. If Volkswagen trained you and you took the certificate to Mercedes, they know you are very well trained because there is a standard that is run across the whole country. So for me, PPP is the only way it can work. There has to be collaboration between the private sector and the public sector. And I use Germany as an example for their TVET system. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and great points. I mean, and you are well qualified to talk about the German system. I mean, since you work with an organization that's based on that, and thanks for that. I think it's also good for us to enlarge the conversation because of the fact that as we talk about public partnership, it's also important for us to also remember that the non-profit sector is also part of that that cycle. I mean, at the point in which PPP came to be, the large discussion was around public-private, and the general assumption was that public meant government. I mean, so public has been expanded to be whatever is in the public interest, which is on the one hand government, and secondly civil society organization, donor organizations, and all of that. So please, as we provide our responses and our contributions, let's remember the PPP is the three cycles that run society: civil society, private sector, and public sector. Is everybody coming together that gets that. So let me come to Victoria again. Victoria, your own opinion. What do you think are the risks that we need to be conscious of? Because we can't be selling ideas to people to work with government without letting them know what to look out for. Else, the first problem they run into, they're going to chicken out. So what are the risks? Are there risks or there are no risk?
I think I'll just like to start by saying that in everything, there's a risk, and in everything, there's an advantage. And you talked about expanding PPP to include civil society. I think PPP also includes communities. It includes the people. It includes everyone who is a stakeholder. We talk about, in my organization, we talk about creating shared value. It's about everybody who is within that ecosystem. It's about the industry. It's about everyone. And, in working to solution a problem, every stakeholder must be taken into consideration, their needs, their own capabilities, their own desires, what the peculiarities of the environment are. Those things have to be a part of it. So the main thing to think about when you're designing a partnership is looking at it from end to end, a 360 degrees view of the solution from beginning to end. You can't solution one part and then the end of it is not solutioned. You have to look at it all the way from the beginning to the end. Who are the people who need it? Who are the people who can become a problem or who can become a challenge? Who are the people who can benefit from it? How do you address everybody's need, everybody's interest? Because at the end of the day, that's what it is. So you need the government to create the structures, you need an oversight, you need regulation, but you need the community to accept that as well and to understand why it's important to them. For instance, Nestle has technical training centers. We have 2 right now, one in Agbara and the other, near close to the FCT where we have our factories in Abaji. And the aim of the technical training center is to raise the young people, to equip the young people to get good employment, to contribute to the industrialization of the country. And then what did we find? We found that the youth within the particular communities do not even have the basic qualification to take advantage of this technical training, right? And so what did we need to do? We needed to speak to the community. We needed to tell them why it was important for their young people to aspire to be a part of this technical training, and this is the advantage that we bring to them in the future. But if they don't have the basic education, what do we do? And so discussing with the community, discussing with other stakeholders, we found that we needed to institute a scholarship program that gives them the basic education, the basic qualifications that they need to qualify for this. So the community had to be a part of it. The leaders of the community had to be a part of it. The youth themselves had to be a part of it. And of course, we're working with the government, we're working with the Nigerian Employers Consultative Association, we're working with ITF. So every stakeholder has to be a part of designing a solution. Yes, there are risks, but if you go intentionally and design a program that takes all the stakeholders into account and takes into consideration what the possible risks could be, and you solution them from the beginning, then you would have gone a long way to eliminate those risks. And then only the advantages will be the high point that you're looking towards to deliver the program and to execute the program. And at the end of the day, you learn. As you learn, you make changes, you correct the errors, and you go ahead. So the risks are not really the problem. I don't think that we'll start a discussion with what would the risks be? What are the advantages? What benefit could it bring? That's what we need to start from. And then talk about how to eliminate anything that could become a clog in the wheels of delivering or executing these projects. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks for that. There is the African saying that if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go with others. But I think part of the assumptions we have there is that we think everybody wants to go far. And not everybody wants to go fast. Some people just want to go fast. I mean, that's where there's an Olympic sport called 100 meters, and that's where there's also an Olympic sport called marathon. The assumption that everybody wants to be using boats will not take us anywhere. We need to accept that the Usain Bolts want to run 100 meters in 9 seconds and they are done. But we also need to accept that there are people from Ethiopia and from Kenya who want to run marathons and want to spend hours doing that. And so we should not get into the assumption that everybody, and let's be very sincere. I mean, we had the one of Nigeria's prominent musicians celebrating his birthday, raised millions of naira and decided that he was going to give to orphanages. That guy ain't going to do no PPP because he wants to quickly get it done and he doesn't want to get himself involved. He selected the people to share the money. He opened the email address and said, hey guys, share this money and let's be done. We'll meet next birthday. Now, somebody may say that's not CSR. Somebody may argue all those theoretical issues, but that guy doesn't want to do any partnership with government because he feels that's the best way to achieve what he wants to achieve. So we must also admit that some people would not want to partner with government. And so let me ask Folusho at this point too, to ask, okay, in your view, I mean, if you're a Davido and you have 250 million to share to orphanages, right? Will you go with government? Let's assume you didn't want to even do orphanage. Let's assume you wanted to do schools. would you go with government? Would you partner with government, or you just want to quickly take this thing and why would you not go with government? Is it because you consider it risky, or you think it will make it slow? Felicia, help us with that.
That's a very interesting question, Prof. Honestly speaking, I think that if we're being honest, I mean, the government in Nigeria has both gotten a very bad rep and has also not really displayed, what anybody would feel comfortable giving government that certain amount of money to really do what needs to be done. And that's part of why we're here anyway. We're having that discussion because of that. I mean, if the government, was doing a good enough job on their own, I'm sure I would be willing to give the government, Davido and whoever else would be, but let's be honest, they are not. And that's also why, we have a lot of development sector organizations, similar to Junior Achievement Nigeria, similar to what Dr. Mo is doing, and so many organizations that are in that sector that are augmenting and, assisting the government to make things better, because we recognize that it is extremely important that the masses get the education. I mean, Mr. Jegede was very clear about the kind of education that he got. Dr. Jegede, maybe you'll be a doctor soon. Maybe I'm prophesying to you. This one is I'm calling you doctor. But he was very clear about the fact that many of us were able to go to certain kinds of schools that we cannot even imagine sending our children to. Dr. Mo made the point about how Queen's College, King's College, a lot of these schools, talking about old boys association coming together to run the school. Is that really going to work? Is it really as easy as it seems? So I think the truth is that there's nobody that has a huge sum of money that will go and give it to any African government, let's call it what it is, to run anything. But there are organizations, who are doing that work and they're doing it well. And so for me, it's about us equipping those organizations to do the job. I mean, what we do at Junior Achievement Nigeria is we run programs that empower the youth. And, we are a development sector organization. We partner with everybody. We partner with the private sector. We partner with the government. We partner with international organizations. And we're running programs and we're empowering the youth all over the nation. And so for me, it's really about taking the time out to really discover what that bridge is and partnering with those people to get that job done, because we honestly cannot give it to the government, if we're being honest. Apologies to the government, but that's just truth.
Now, Felicia, that's what they call, is that supposed to be like a yellow card or a red card to government based on your comments?
All join.
Okay, I mean, it's a very interesting conversation, because I think we need some balance of reality and pragmatism at the end. Audrey is saying yellow and red. Okay, interesting. When you mix red and yellow, what do you get? I wonder the color you get. I mean, I think we need some elements of pragmatism in the conversation too, and I think that's what we're trying to address with those round of questions. Hey, are there risks? Is this what we must always do? But I mean, what is obvious is that if the goal, and if you check the topic of our session, and again I'll repeat to remind everyone, bridging the inequality gap in education in Nigeria, the role of public-private partnership. So if the goal is bridging the inequality gap in education, it is clear you cannot do it alone. And we cannot overemphasize that. Now, if you want to solve the inequality gap in education in a small system, I mean, so for example, you want to go to your village and maybe there are only 600 children in your village, you can stop the inequality problem for those 600. But you can't solve it for the over 30, 40 million number of children that we have that are supposed to have the right education in Nigeria without the involvement. One, you don't even have the resources, you don't have the reach. I mean, and I always had to try to make this point to many of our private sector, civil society group, because sometimes we have this sense of invisibility that we can do certain things. We don't have the scale or the resources. So I think we need to also put that at the back of our, and I agree that we can't make progress in terms of inequality without we partnering with the government is a given. And like I always try to tell people that, in football, you have many choices to score goals. You can play the match, 90 minutes, or you can play penalty. Some people like playing the match, 90 minutes. That looks like the people that want to do PPP. But some people just want to play penalty. All they just want is the net is there, the ball is there, they kick and they're gone. Maybe that's the Davido model anyway. But the question we need to accept is the fact that there's a point where the only thing you need to do is to play a penalty. But there are times when you have 90 minutes. So let's start to talk we're in our last minute. Yes, Andrew, Audrey, thanks. You said there is role for everybody at the end of the day, which is very correct. As we start to wind up, we have just a couple of minutes. So let's start to talk about what are the building blocks? What makes for successful partnership in education? What are the things that make for success when we talk about PPP in education? And I would like us to be very experiential. I know that Dr. Mo has worked on the LEARN project, working with government. I know Junior Achievements is based on a partnership. Many years ago, I used to sit on the board of the Junior Achievements. That was when I was much younger. Now that I'm old, you people feel I'm too old to do some things. Mr. Kadi Jagede has talked about the partnership they have done with the German government, and then also Victoria has talked about what Nesta has done. So I want us to be very practical now. Maybe we'll just make it, again, at 3 minutes, like your top 3 ingredients. And please, I want us to situate it in Nigeria, because it's important for us to realize if we say we want to reduce inequality in Nigeria, we're going to be partnering with Nigerian agents. So what are your top 3 ingredients that make it to happen? I mean, as you well know, one of the favorite things we know about Nigeria is that we make jollof rice. And your jollof rice can have liver, can have shaki, can have roundabout, can have whatever. But we know what are the basic 3 things that make jollof rice to be jollof rice. So that's what I'm asking for. If PPP is the jollof rice, what are the top 3? Let me start with, would you mind if I start with Dr. Mo? Dr. Mo, you want to tell us what you think are the 3 top things that we need as we go on this journey of PPP?
Great, thank you. And Prof, it's not really nice of you to say when you were younger, when you don't look a day over 55, you're still a student. Anyway, pardon me. I think just to also contribute to the conversation, that just held very briefly, I think one important thing to say is that we can incentivize good behavior. Ivan Pavlov has shown us that you can incentivize good behavior, whether in the public sector or in the private sector. There are discourses around knights and knaves, and how you can create knaves and how you can create knights, out of civil servants and other public sector officials who have official responsibilities in the public sector. So it's important to recognize that. We can also there's so many things you can incentivize. You can incentivize learning outcomes. You can actually help teachers, not just to teach the test, but to create a holistic environment where children are able to learn, and then you see the outcomes at the end of the day. So these things can actually be done. And I think that for me, notions of partnership and what are critical, you said 3 things. I'll draw on the Learn experience, which you referred to. And the Learn Nigeria Citizen-Led Assessment is a project that TEP Center, where I work, initiated. And this is a project that saw us going to 21,000 households, surveying 49,000 children, because we wanted to determine what their foundational literacy and numeracy skills were. But it wasn't data for the sake of data. It was data, 1, to be able to influence policy decisions, and 2, to be able to show citizens that they have agency, whether in their local communities or in their schools, they have agency and they can do something about education. And so we trained over 2,000 volunteers who then went out and collected this data by themselves. What did we learn? 1, partnership is critical. And this is where my first principle comes. Respect is very important. I know that it's very difficult to determine how a person feels if you haven't walked in their shoes. 7 or 8 years where I've worked very closely with government actors, I have felt such a deep sense of compassion for a lot of them who are technocrats especially, and some who are civil servants who are working in the sector and are severely constrained, not just because of issues around political will, but also because of issues around political skill. So the first is respect. The public sector brings something to the table. They bring a capability that is absolutely impossible to replicate in the private sector. Likewise, the private sector, and I'm sorry to generalize here, but I've been given 3 minutes. The private sector or the non-state sector very often brings a discipline, a transparency, and brings a rigor that is often not found in many public sector institutions. And so that complement becomes critical. Secondly, and I've touched on this already, transparency. When we were implementing the Learn Nigeria Citizen-Led Assessment, we were fully transparent with the government. They had a seat on the steering committee. They had seats on the technical committee. We designed the assessments together. We went into the field and collected the data together. And so when the time came to publicly, because it's an open source resource, to publicly launch that data set, there were no voices of dissension really from the government, because we had all done it together and we had done it transparently. And that brings me to my third principle, which is patience. Anyone who wants to work with the government to reform systems, and I'm not talking of, I talked about the low spectrum of public-private partnership. I'm not referring to that right now. Anyone who wants to reform education in the long term, who is in it for the long haul, must grow some, I won't refer to what it is, but must have patience. Really critical to have a lot of patience and to have a lot of grit and tenacity. And I think that when we think about the combination of respect, of transparency, and of patience, I think then we have a winning combination for what could be very successful partnerships in the education sector. Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Mo. I will be doing a revision of my age based on your comments. I mean, I used to read a version of the Bible called Revised Standard Version. I'll be probably coming with a Revised Standard Version of my age in the light of your comments.
Oh, I have nothing but love for you. You know that.
Thank you very much. I think Dr. Mo makes they three clear things that he considers very important: mutual respect, transparency, and patience. And thanks for that. I think we can't overemphasize that. So let me call on Victoria. Victoria, what are your top three in making this jollof rice called PPP?
Thank you. And Dr. Mo mentioned something that is really critical for me, which is number one. The number one thing, very, very important thing, is data. Every intervention, every partnership must be based on data, clear data, analyzing the gaps, analyzing the needs. That is very, very critical. Now, the second thing, is the design itself. The design has to be very well thought out. It has to be designed, of course, starting with the data, and you design the program or the partnership to address those critical challenges that have been raised by the data. And then, of course, the third thing is, I have to mention the same ingredient, which is tenacity. You must be in it for the long haul. It's not something that will happen in 1 year or 2 years or 3 years and then you've solved all the problems. It takes a very long time. So you must have a program that is long-term. You must be in it for the long haul. So you must have the tenacity that it takes. You must have a sustainability element to your plan and your program. There must be a transfer of the skills. There must be a transfer. There must be a buy-in of the objectives by every stakeholder, and they must be able to extend it. Even when you step away from the program, there must be a continuity, because if not, you lose the advantages that you would have gained in the couple of years, or even if you spent 5 years building that program. Those are the key things that are critical for me in building any partnership or any program that is meant to last and to really solve problems. Thank you.
Thank you, Victoria. Victoria's mentioned 3 points. The first one is data-driven. Second one, the design of the program of partnership. When she started with data and design, I thought she was going to mention, and I call it the 3 Ds of partnership. So I was waiting for the third one, and then she said it's tenacity. I mean, interestingly, it's one of the 3 that Dr. Mo has mentioned. Thanks, Victoria, for that. Felicia, your top 3 in making this jollof rice?
All right, so let me start by saying that I worked in the private sector for several years before moving into the development sector this year. So this is actually my first year as a full-time worker in this sector, and I am enjoying myself greatly. And so I'm going to say the 3 things, kind of just based off of my perspective of what I've experienced, in the past few months. So the first thing for me is, I think that it's very important that we know exactly what it is that we're doing and why it is that we're doing it. So what is our goal? There has to be a clarity of purpose that is clearly articulated to everybody that is involved in making this jollof rice. Is it going to be firewood jollof rice? Is it going to be normal in my kitchen jollof rice? Let it be extremely clear to everybody that is getting involved, so that there's no confusion, there's no ambiguity, and there's no, feeling of this is what I was promised versus what I got at the end of the day. The second thing for me is just openness, right, with everybody about what it is that you're doing and how it is that you do it. So with us at Junior Achievement Nigeria, there are certain things that we will not do. And it's very important for, whether it's our funders, whether it's the government, that everybody knows that this is how we operate and these are the things that we will not do. And it's extremely important that we are all on the same page concerning that. Last but not the least for me is focusing on everybody's strengths, right? So I realize that sometimes we almost make it seem like, the public sector, the private sector, the government did this, and we don't really value what everybody brings to the table. The government has something that they bring to the table, I know that they get a lot of bad rep, but there is something that they're bringing to the table. And I like what Dr. Mo said when she spoke about how spending time with certain people in that sector made her understand, what it is that people are really going through. I think when you can look at your end goal and you can look at everybody that is involved in having to make this jollof rice, and you can really focus on everybody's strengths, and you can keep that in mind throughout, the period that you are doing whatever it is that you're doing, I think it really does go a very, very long way in you achieving your goals. Because the moment we try to start making the government, as an example, seem like the private sector, or the private sector seem like the government, and so on and so forth, then we run into serious problems. So it's really about focusing on what it is that everybody is bringing to the table, realizing that nobody can do this on their own. We all need to be in it together to achieve that goal. Thank you.
Okay, thanks so much. And I like the fact that you actually helped us to clarify the kind of jollof rice we're trying to make. You were specific and you said it's firewood. When I heard firewood, I was happy because that's the jollof rice. That's the original jollof rice, the one that have that number and has endorsement. Actually, the firewood jollof rice has ISO standard and guides its position. Okay, thank you very much. Clarity of purpose, value, respect, and all of that. Thanks so much for your top 3 points. Mr. Jegede, please help us. Your top 3. Now, I know men cook jollof rice, and so I know you will tell us what you think are the top 3 in this dimension. Please go ahead, sir.
Thank you very much, Yomi. My co-panelists have made very good points, so I don't want to repeat the same points. They are very valid points to make. In terms of jollof rice, sorry, okay. I'm good. In terms of jollof rice, I'm very good at eating it, but I don't know how to prepare it, I must confess. But I'm good at eating it. For me, the top 3 things I will mention are: 1, the government. The government, like we've all identified, is such a critical player in solving this problem. Educational equality, quality education, scaling. The other parties, private sector, NGO, can do things on a small scale, like Professor Yomi said. But to scale it nationwide, the government has to be involved. So they are a very critical partner. So I think government should try and work holistically, right? They should work on a big picture framework in terms of education. They should work long term. They should think long term and not election to election. I can cite many examples of policies that were overturned when a new governor came, after the previous governor has spent enormous amount of money on it, right? So government must begin to think long term. And then thirdly, the same point, number 1, government must also be flexible. They have to be, they need to be flexible in terms of how they engage with the other partners, private sector and NGOs. My experience so far is they can tend to be very rigid in the way they look at things, right? If they are more flexible, more open-minded, I think we can achieve a lot more together. Then still on government, you find that in government, there are so many silos trying to solve the same problem. So back to the holistic thing, the government must start to work as a one government. So when you look at the TVET section, vocational education, you look at the federal government, you'll be surprised that so many arms of the federal government, different ministries are trying to do things on the same problem, right? I think it will be better if they are all domiciled in one place and everybody in government works to the same agenda. That's number one. Number two, we have to de-emphasize university education as a policy of government. It's just crazy the amount of emphasis we put on university education in Nigeria to the detriment of vocational education. What we need in this stage of our development is vocational education. You want to build a house, you want to make your tiles, you have to go and get tilers from Cotonou, right? Togo, Ghana. We don't have the vocational skills we need in every sector you look at, which is what led to Alhaji Dangote and Dr. Fesge to set up this program we are on. They saw a serious gap in the manufacturing sector in Nigeria in terms of skills needs in the factories. Okay, so we have to de-emphasize university education. I'm not saying cancel it, don't cancel it, but place more emphasis on vocational education. That's number two. And number three, all of us as Nigerians, we have to stop working in silos and find a way to join together and work and maybe form coalition groups, form thought groups, whatever we want to call it, but approach the government with the same voice. We might still have our unit, our small organizations below, that's okay, but we have to come and approach government with a much larger body and common voice. I think we will be able to achieve more that way. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Great points. You mentioned the need for government to see things differently, have holistic, big picture mindset, and also they need to be flexible in the relationship. They need to de-emphasize university education, place emphasis on TVET, and also the need for us to have a mindset that works together as a team and not work in silo. I noted that you mentioned that you say you do not know how to make jollof rice. Is that the result of an inequality in education in making jollof rice, or what is the cause of that?
Yes. So my mom did not teach me that inequality. She taught my sisters.
Okay, so maybe we will just do a PPP of the panelists to do a class for you on this thing so that we can start to speak this down. So as we round down, we have just a couple of minutes left. I'm just going to request for your last words. 2 minutes, each speaker will have the privilege to just tell us their final words. It could be action item, it could be advice, and all of that. Thanks, Winifred, for your feedback. Abiodun Okunola also said that we need to emphasize vocational training and doesn't need to be overemphasized. Thank you very much for those comments. Please keep them coming. If we also have questions, I will also take them at this point. But as a roundup, we have just a couple of minutes, 2 minutes to each speaker. Just your last words as we close. Let me start with Folusho. Your last words, 2 minutes, please.
Okay, I'll probably be less than 2 minutes. I think that with everything relating to public-private partnerships or any sort of partnership at all, I think it's just important to always remember to begin with the end in mind and just always have clarity of purpose. So always be clear as to what exactly it is that you're trying to achieve, who it is that you're even going to partner with comes from what exactly it is that you're trying to be achieved, and just be crystal clear about your expectations, about what is required and all of that from the very beginning. And always remember that everybody does have value that they're bringing, and it's important to play to people's strengths at all times. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks for your last words. Thanks, Felicia. Dr. Mo?
Thank you so much. I think what I'd like to say very briefly is, one, it's important to recognize in this conversation around public and private sector partnerships that human beings by default have choice, and we must accept that. And so even in context where we have pure public provision of very high quality, we still have differentiated demand. Parents still want their children to go to a football academy or to go to a school where they can learn ballet. And that's your right, insofar as you can afford it. And so we are not prescriptive in the kind of education that all children receive. But we must provide a basic quality of education that all children can access if they wish to. and that no child is precluded from, whether on the basis of gender or ability, disability, or where they live or how much their parents earn. I think that is absolutely critical and is necessary for a just and egalitarian society that we claim Nigeria is. The second point to make is just to address, the ideological issues around public-private partnerships. The United Declaration of Human Rights, Universal Declaration of Human Rights, makes it very clear that education lies betwixt two legitimate rights. On the one hand, education shall be directed to the full development of the human personality and to the strengthening of respect for human rights and fundamental freedoms. It shall promote understanding, tolerance, and friendship among all nations, racial or religious groups, and shall further the activities of the United Nations for the maintenance of peace. But at the same time, the same statement says parents have a prior right to choose the kind of education that shall be given to their children. And so whether we like it or not, public-private partnerships are a default the way that we address education. And the sooner we think about structuring arrangements that take the child and put that child at the center of the conversation, the sooner we will move towards achieving not just the Sustainable Development Goals, but also the other goals that we have clearly outlined for ourselves as a nation state. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mo. Thanks for that. I like the link between human rights and education. Thanks, Abiodun Okulola, for your comments. He's asking, I hope it's not just a talk shop. Yes, it's not just a talk shop. That's why we talked about the top three. The idea of the top three is what you need to have in your hand as we go ahead to start to seek for those partnerships. Thanks. Let me call on Victoria, your last words.
Thank you very much. I think that it is clear from the discussions that we've had today, and everybody who lives in Nigeria and understands the huge gaps that we have in the education sector, that multi-stakeholder action is needed to address the challenges, especially with the public school system. Yes, parents do have a choice, and we have a lot of private schools that are available, but if we look at the fact that the majority of our population are the youth, and then the majority of this youth can only attend the public schools, we need to take very deliberate actions now to address the gap that we have within this system. I think that if we're going to move forward, make economic strides, develop the economy, develop our environment and all of that, the basic thing that we need is to educate our people properly. That is very critical, and that's something that we must not look away from. Every stakeholder must be a part of this conversation and must be a part of the solution to this problem. That is very, very important. Now, the second thing is that, yes, we might think that the actions that we're taking in our own small space is too small, or it might not solve all the problem, but it takes all those small actions, all those small steps that we take to address the critical challenges. And yes, we must work with government, and we must identify the exact gaps that need to be filled, that the government can play a role in, and our role in filling those gaps, and begin to take very, very, very deliberate steps to put in place the systems and structures that will work, even if we're not there, even if we're not on ground, that can be replicated at a large scale to address the challenges across the country, from north to east, from west to south. That is very, very important for us to do as a group and as critical stakeholders having this conversation today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Victoria. Very great points. Lastly, Mr. Folusho Badamosi. Oh, sorry, I'm sorry, Mr. Kayode Jagede. Sorry, my apologies. Mr. Jagede, your last words?
No, thanks. First thing I would like to say is we have a huge problem on our hands in Nigeria. We have a massive number of young people who are unemployed or unemployable because they've not been educated or skilled, given the right skills. We have to solve it, otherwise it's coming back to bite us. In order to solve it, my recommendation is that we put the national and public interest above our own individual or personal interests at all levels. And as Nigerians, we have to be in the lead, right? We have a lot of foreign companies or foreign governments who show interest in helping us solve various problems in Nigeria, NGOs, right? But we have to be in the lead to solve the problems. And then we create the framework, create the agenda, and pull them in to fit into it, not the other way around, that we want them to be in the lead. And believe me, that is our default mindset. We want these foreigners to lead us and so on, or NGOs to lead us. Let's change that, and we'll be able to have a good chance of solving the problem. Then finally, our program, the Aliko Dangote Foundation VDMA Technical Training Program, is a vocational skills program that is specifically focused at industrial mechanics, training mechanics that you need to work in any factory to operate or maintain. This program is not for Dangote Group. This program is for the whole nation. Okay, so we are training, we currently have 120 young people in training in Obajana, Kogi State. We have a big campus that was built for that purpose. This program has spent almost 10 million euros so far. Okay, and it is well equipped with the latest German equipment, and it is there for our youth to be developed. We picked the 120 from all over Nigeria without anyone knowing anybody, and they are not paying one kobo for anything. There's no tuition, there's no school fees, feeding is free, and they even get a stipend, monthly stipend as allowance. We created it as a center of excellence to show what can be done by the private sector so that others can copy. So it's open for partnership, it's open for learning. I throw the invitation to everybody. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks so much. Mr. Biodun Okonola is saying nobody can love you more than you love yourself. Just to emphasize what Mr. Kyle Jagede has said, and you need for Nigerians to do that. Quite a number of comments. Winifred, thanks for your kind words and thanks for waking up so early to join the panel. I hope we got a couple of actions there. So we're done. We're done at this session. I want to thank everybody for joining us. Like it typically happens with adult learning, sometimes as an adult you go to learn something, and as you walk away from there, you may start to ask yourself, so what do I do with what I've learned? It's important for us to get to the reflective learning mode now and try to reflect on everything I've heard, and you realize that you have gained quite a lot of things. Mr. Folusho, so Mr. Jekede, there's a request that you should share more information about that training. So can you please make a comment on the comment box, whether there's a website that people can do? Dr. Mo, please, can I also request, can you also send a link to your website so that people can read more about what you've done? And same with Victoria and also Folusho. Please, can we just send information about the project? Dr. Mo, please send something on the chat about tech and also about the LEND project that you did. I want to thank everybody for joining the session, and I want to thank the organizers for inviting me. I do not take it for granted. I hope I did not disappoint you. If I've disappointed you, please know that it's because of the inequalities in my educational development. And also, last thing to say to everybody is that today is the World Day for Disabilities. It's also important as we talk about inequality that if we have disabled people in Nigeria, which we do have, there's a need for us to have education that meets their needs and makes them become better people. And so I would like all of us to become champions of disabled people, either in the workplace or in the family or in the school, and make the difference. Because at the end of the day, they suffer a greater part of this inequality. Thank you very much. Have a nice day, and please enjoy the rest of the workshop and this conference as we go to the next panel discussion and video. Thank you, and have a nice day.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much for that amazing panel session. I call it amazing because the knowledge is It's a lot. I have been soaking in so much, and I know the same, has gone into play for the participants. Thank you to the moderator, Professor Yomi Fawemi. Thank you so much. Thank you to Victoria Ndewaduka. Thank you very much for being here. Thank you to Mr. Kayode Jegede, Dr. Mutukwe Defeso Lateju. Thank you so much, and thank you to Felicia Guadamoshi as well. Thank you for all of the things you said. I mean, it's clear that no one can get the job done alone. It's clear that we can't also overlook the role of the government or push them aside in our quest to get things done fast. We need to continue to collaborate, put all the effort together, push as much as we can as a team to get what we need to get out of the education sector. And I love all of the points around vocational, pushing for vocational trainings instead of the emphasis laid on university education. That is also profound as well. Thank you very much against all of the panelists. And I would love for the participants to please put their hands together for everyone who joined us on this panel session, for the speakers. Please put your hands together. Let them see that we appreciate what they've done so far. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you very much. Very insightful. Yes, I see your comments coming in. Thank you. All right. Because of our time, we're now going to move on to the next case presentation. And this is on bridging the inequality gap in education. This is going to be practical. This has Slum to School Digital Classroom Initiative as the major, case to study or case to look at for this presentation. And yes, I'll also take on this particular segment. We have the founder, Slum to School Africa, Oredam Oto, to take on this presentation. Good afternoon. I'm sure he's here somewhere. You can come on stage now and just say hello before you kick off the presentation.
Hi, good afternoon. Good afternoon, Elosa. How you doing?
I'm very well, thank you. Thank you for joining us. I will now hand over to you.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. And I think I'll say that I have tried to do something that I haven't done probably in the last couple of years. I've been up all night. It's just 6:45 a.m. here where I am, and I actually did not sleep because I was trying to be up so that I do not sleep and forget my session. But I was expected to come on about 25 minutes ago, so I'm going to look for Professor Fawemi, for my 25 minutes. But I'm very excited to be here. And I think the LBS community is one that is very close to my heart, and I think it's one of the reasons why I decided to make this sacrifice, because I believe that we have very shared values, and I'm very inspired by the work that the entire team, Dr. Franklin and the entire team at the business school is doing. I listened to the previous session, and of course, they're very amazing, I would say, development experts, professionals, working with passion, and it was great listening to Felicia and Dr. Mo and every other person on that panel. So thank you for having me. I'm going to be spotlighting a program which we implemented sometime last year. And it's just been a very innovative and very exciting program that showcases how innovative we can be with education. Now, when most people think about education, what you think about firstly is the formal type of education, which is having a teacher in front of the classroom, a classroom full of students. But, we have various forms of education. We have informal education, semi-formal education. We have the formal type of education. And this also accounts for greater learning outcomes, where you have kids who are learning languages, values, cultures, life skills, and all of this are very important forms of education, or very, 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 very important outcomes from education. But unfortunately, we do not measure those outcomes. We do not also grade them. And just to throw this out there, I think it would be very important for us to start having the conversations on how we can start infusing informal learning into 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 some grading system, so that kids are not just graded only based on what they learn in the classroom, but what they learn outside the classroom. During the pandemic, we could see that so many kids were not in school, but learning still happened. But we had the world saying we have a year of lost education because we were only accounting for the formal type of education. We did not realize that kids were learning several other things, and this brings us to the point that in today's world, so many forms, even formal education is still going to be, as much as we know that formal education is going to be very important. Majority of schools today are learning online. In 2018, there was a survey conducted by Babson's survey research group in the US. And because the US has lots of data, it said that over 30% of higher education students in the US were taking at least one course online. Now, this was not the reality 30 years ago. We all know what happened last year with the pandemic, and by the fall of 2020, over 75% of the largest 50 districts in the US were taking almost all their classes online. And today we can see how the world has changed. Sometime 2 years ago, we probably would not have been having this conference online. And so the question is, how can we start rethinking the way we deliver education? How can we start rethinking how we can be more innovative with education? Traditional education, as we have known it, is rapidly changing as well. And today, being physically present, it's just one option, to get educational content across to students. 20 years ago, the internet was not as robust as it is today. Today, internet connectivity is faster. Whilst we are still on 4G back in Nigeria, in so many places, 3G, some countries are on 6G. So you can imagine how fast the internet connectivity in so many parts of the world, would be. I use 5G where I am. And so we need to realize that the world is changing, the world is moving very quickly, and we need to also move as quick as that is happening. Mobile devices are becoming more affordable. Net technology are also becoming very accessible. And so when the pandemic actually broke out, we asked ourselves, how do we ensure that kids are learning? How do we ensure that our beneficiaries do not just stay idle at home? Now, at Slum to School, we are known for providing education to some of the most underserved children who live in slums and remote communities in several parts of the country. And when the pandemic actually broke out, so many kids were learning online, from the elite schools, from the very high-end schools. But our kids in slums, the slums like Makoko, the slums like Takwa Bay, many of them never had access to any form of education. And so the question for us was, how do we ensure that we get them learning? And we went a step forward to provide digital tablets and digital devices for the kids, but that was not enough. The question for us was then, how do we ensure that these kids are actually using these devices? How do we track them? How do we engage with them? How do we monitor their learning outcomes? How do we create some form of pseudo classroom for them? And that was where the idea to create the virtual learning classroom came into the picture. I'm not sure if many of us here have seen the video. I would try to just play it, if I can share my screen, so that we can probably just watch it for 3 minutes or 2 minutes to just have an idea what the virtual learning studio was, and we can come back and have this conversation. Can I share my screen, please? Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
From humble beginnings, from age-long values, we grow, we take shapes. give up our drive to exceed expectations. Even with the odds stacked up against us. Our determination to succeed is far greater than all obstacles. So we learn all we can, no matter what.
How are you doing this morning? So good to see you. Samuel Lagasu, Sisiano Menawako. Ugola, how are you? Yeah, so tell me, how has your virtual learning program been and how have your teachers been treating you? Oh yeah, Bukola, tell me.
It's been a great learning experience. I never knew I could learn this for long. I wish other children can experience this.
For me, Cisco Networking Academy has been great. I've perfected my use of Microsoft Office 365 and I look forward to today's class.
At Slum to School, we believe that the future of education is digital, and every child deserves to have access to the best educational tools to learn and succeed in the 21st century, regardless of their social or economic background. We're so excited to have successfully completed our first virtual learning studio, and through the incredible support of our amazing volunteers and partners, we have connected almost 1,000 kids. But our goal is to connect 10,000 kids this year. We would love to invite you to be part of this exciting journey as we raise funds to bring love and education through technology to these amazing kids. Come on board and let's do more. Okay, welcome back. So that was sometime in June, July 2020 last year. And this was at the peak of the pandemic. We were able to raise funds. We bought digital devices. Our team actually used several agile methods to come up with a very innovative program, what we called the virtual learning program. And it was designed in such a way where there were two components. We had the cluster learning program and the remote learning program. Now, the remote learning program was a program for older learners, kids who were in secondary school. And we got the digital devices for them, tablets, for some of them laptops. We got headsets, we got power banks and charging kiosks. We got internet connectivity. And we did this not because we had all the resources, but we wanted to try to breach the inequality access to education, because this was basically what kids in most of our partner schools, the very elite schools, had access to. So the question for us was, why can't our kids also have this? Because they come from communities like this does not mean that they should, they should be deprived of such great opportunities. And so we went an extra mile to try to raise funds to do that. And we were very, very fortunate to have gotten amazing partners who jumped on board at very short notice. And so the remote learning components, we got about 150 kids for the pilot phase, about 100 kids actually for the pilot phase, and we provided these devices for them. We saw a whole lot of very incredible changes, a whole lot of very amazing learning outcomes. These kids were learning independently. They were learning faster than they would have learned in a classroom. They were more innovative. They were more interested in education. They started developing lots of soft skills, not just the literacy and numeracy and social habits and life skills that we were, they were part of the learning content for that program. But we still seeing these kids going extra miles to learn how to use Photoshop and stay using the photo tools to illustrate and to animate. And this was just a whole lot of very incredible learning outcomes that we could see in the kids. The second component of the program was the cluster learning program. And this was primarily because we realized that many kids were younger, we couldn't afford to get devices for all of them, but we still wanted them to keep learning. And so the question for us was, how do we ensure that these kids, as young as they are, 5 years, 7 years, 9 years, in elementary school, primary school, early childhood classes, how do we ensure that they continuously learn? And so we designed the cluster learning program for these kids. And this component primarily had a teacher who had a learning device, laptop, with a cluster of about 25 kids. These kids were learning in their community because schools were shut down. And we realized that it was also very innovative, because on a normal day, most of these kids would not even go to school because they wouldn't be able to walk very far. In most cases, schools were not close to their communities. In some cases, their communities did not even have schools. And so we broke them into little clusters, and we could see that the number of kids who were learning informally, in fact, formally, increased by over 200%. Their learning outcomes also increased, literacy, numeracy. We have a report which we can share on all of this. And that was also very inspiring to see how much we could get over 1,000 kids learning during a pandemic with little or no, access to classrooms and to the regular formal kind of education. Now, this was very inspiring for us because the remote learning component, which involved the learning devices for the kids, inspired us to come up with a program which we called WAEC Champions. And we said, if we could have seen so much impact during the short 2 months period where this program was piloted, and we could see so much impact, why can't we help over 100 of our kids who are preparing for WAEC with the same program? And so we launched the WAEC Champions program, which involved getting teachers, professional teachers from different places, getting beneficiaries from different schools, getting them devices, and connecting them on the platform for a 3 months preparatory program for WAEC. Now, the results are amazing. We've been receiving lots of results from the kids. We've been seeing lots of A's and B's and C's. And these are kids who on a normal day would not perform very well compared to previous years and previous results we've had from our kids. The cluster learning component of the program inspired us to also figure out how to ensure that kids could learn in their communities without having to go into a classroom. Because in so many communities, there were no classrooms and there were no schools. And so this program, because of the success, we were able to get over 1,000 kids learning. UNICEF came on board and partnered with us to get 550,000 children across 3 northern states and over 1,000 communities to learn in their community. Now, this program is still ongoing, and it's been extremely, very impactful and very, very successful. Now, the question for us is, what really can we do with opportunities we have? Remote learning is extremely very important. It's cost effective. If we look at the opportunities that of course you might say, is it easy to get devices for kids? But the world is changing. This should not be seen as luxury. 20 years ago, many of us did not have mobile devices because it was luxury. It was seen to be luxurious. The next 20 years, this is going to be commonplace. Every single person would have a mobile device or a digital device or a tablet will be almost as we wear our shoes or as we wear our clothes. The world is going to really evolve and change rapidly. And so the question is, how can we ensure that this is achieved? Why is this important? Why is this urgent? And we need to realize that in the next 3 decades, our population, and I'm not just speaking about the population of the African continent, most importantly, the population of our country, Nigeria, is going to double. We have about 200 million, and data tells us that we're going to have 400 million people in the next less than 3 decades. We're going to be the 3rd most populous nation. And so how can we maximize the potential of this human resource? Because it's a great human resource. Or how can we watch economic reality just crumble because We have not envisaged that we're going to have such a population, and we haven't started preparing and planning to really maximize it. How can we ensure that education is at the center of any economic policy, any development policy that we as a nation, as political leaders and policymakers are implementing? We need to also ensure that every child is educated, irrespective of their location, irrespective of the limitations they have. I always say we need to think about this in this way. When we think of China, what can we allude them to? What do they pride themselves as? We could say they are the manufacturing capital of the world, because every single thing we have in our homes, majority of them come from China. So we call them the manufacturing capital of the world. Dubai today has built a huge economy around tourism, and they could be referred to as the tourism capital of the world. And this has just been in less than 30 years, right? In less than one generation. The US, we know today, is the technology capital of the world. Innovation thrives here. What do we want to be as a nation? Who do we want to be? What could we be? And I think this is a question I'm going to ask the audience. I would love you to just put it in the group. What do you think we could be? What capital could we be? And I would love to see who's going to get it right. Probably what is on my mind, because that might not be, the only right answer, but what's on my mind. And I'm looking forward to your comments. Can comments be dropped? Okay, I haven't seen any comments yet. Okay, Rera said food supply. Yeah, so when you think of China, China is said to be the manufacturing capital. Dubai is said to be the tourism capital. The US is said to be the technology and innovation capital. What could we be as a nation? We could actually be the human capital of the world. We actually could be, because when you look at the fact that we're going to have the youngest population in the world. I mean, in terms of the age, today, over 75% of our population is below the age of 35. But in the next 30 years, over 85% will be below the age of 25. We're going to be one of probably the youngest nation in the world. And we can really maximize the human capital we have. Today, we can see remittances that runs into billions of US dollars. In 2019, I think it was about 23 billion US dollars, which is higher than any aid we've got. And in 2020, I think it fell because of the pandemic to, I think, about 19 or 16 billion US dollars. This is just remittances. Nigerians are thriving everywhere in the world. How can we ensure that we can export our human resource and add value to the international community as much as we are adding value to our own local community? And so the question is, how can we start thinking innovatively and ensuring that we can deliver education without waiting to build brick and mortar classrooms, without waiting, to continuously do the same thing we have done over and over, knowing that our population is continuously rising. And this primarily was the success of the virtual learning program. Today, we have kids who are learning across 1,000 communities in northern Nigeria, from Zamfara, Kaduna, Niger, and dozens of communities, in fact, hundreds of communities. And this is very impactful. We are looking forward to scaling across more communities, not just in the northern part of the country, but across the other parts of the country, and also across the African continent. We're seeing kids who are learning, who are being more interested in education and being more excited about learning opportunities. And this was just because we thought about a different approach to ensure that we could deliver education, not just in the classroom. And I think it would be great to hear your questions, to speak and exchange ideas on what could be done better and how we could actually achieve more impact. Thank you very much.
Thank you very, very much for that amazing session and case study you presented to us. I could, while your presentation was going on, I was following the chat and some of the comments made by people who felt like everything you've said is amazing. You know, we had feedbacks like incredible, amazing, this is great, fantastic, God bless you and your team, great initiative, amazing job. You know, all of those kept coming in. But let me see if we have any question. Okay, yeah, this one, yeah, we have this question that says, what is the value of being known as human capital when we have major peace and security issues and there is a major gap in capacity development?
Okay, that's a question for me. So I want us to look at the future, right? The realities we have today are not, hopefully wouldn't be the realities of tomorrow. I've always said that one of the most important things we should be doing as a nation right now is building a long-term plan. And I think, one of the speakers in the previous panel allude to that. It's extremely important that as a nation, we have a long-term vision and not one that every other administration every 4 years comes and starts working on some new, design or new agenda that is just going to be, a success factor for that administration. We've seen this reality where projects are not continued, sustainability is not ensured. It would be great if we can work as a nation to have a vision that we all believe in, and not just a vision that is on a piece of paper or a document somewhere in the president's office, but one that the market woman, the bus conductor, every single individual in the country actually buys into and works together to achieve that in the long run. So whoever becomes, whichever political party comes into power 5 years or 10 years or 20 years, there's some sustainability in that, in the implementation of that vision. And I feel that's really what happens to countries that are very economically developed and advanced. There's a long-term sustainability plan, there's a long-term growth plan. And this is not something that I think we have been very efficient in doing. And so when you look at the issues we have today with insecurity, I feel this could actually be resolved if we have a government that focuses on a long-term vision and knows that these challenges we face today need to be urgently and quickly addressed, because it's going to affect the roadmap. So I wouldn't want to focus on the challenges we have now, because the reality is every nation has challenges. Every successful nation that has actually built a successful economic growth plan and actually seen it to its implementation and seen it to actually achieving some level of sustainable growth has gone through a series of challenges like we currently face. And so the question will not be what's the challenges we have now. The question will be what's our long-term vision? And that's really where I feel we need to be more intentional about.
All right, thank you. Let me just quickly go through the comment section to see some of the things we have here before we let you go. Fumilayo Akimbinu says, I like the idea about innovative learning. However, do we have an enabling environment where these kids can use their newly acquired soft skills to impact their world? Or do we need to think of creating one because such skills, if not put to work, is at risk of getting redundant? Do you want to react?
Yeah, and I feel I want to believe that I heard Dr. Mo speak to that at some point. We need to really rethink even the type of education we deliver, right? Today, we still have an educational curriculum, and even the pedagogy is one that was designed for the industrial era, where kids were told, or people were encouraged to go to school, to come out, to graduate and get a job. I think we need to start rethinking the type of education that's being delivered. Do we actually need to have kids who will spend 6 years in primary school? That's a very important question. this is something we inherited. Is it relevant today? Do we need to have kids who are going to spend 3 years in junior secondary school and 3 years in senior secondary school? Is that going to be value added? Do you need to spend 4 years in the university? So these are questions. I'm not saying that this is wrong, but the question is, are we thinking differently? You realize that with a wall of innovation today, you can build a skill in less than 1 year, and you can earn much more than someone who had been in school for 6 years. The world is changing rapidly, and so our educational content, our educational curriculum, even our educational division of our educational system needs to be rethought. And we need to start asking ourselves, how do we ensure that we can create learning outcomes where kids go to school, graduates with soft skills, with hard skills, vocational skills, life skills, and are not dependent on getting a job, but are adding value to the society and creating jobs.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you very much. I think that's the much time can permit us to take, but we really do appreciate your time, your presence, and the knowledge shared so far. I'm sure this is a conversation that will continue beyond the platform, so feel free to continue to engage and connect as much as possible. Thank you. Founders, Belong to School Africa, Oredam Ocho. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for having me.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you. Because we're a bit behind our schedule, we'll now quickly have a video interlude before we get to the summary of learnings. Thank you.
Whether it's mitigating the effects of climate change,
All right, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for staying until the end of our session. So in terms of today, my name is Adon Okupe, and I'm a member of faculty at Lagos Business School, where I teach sustainability and strategic management. And in terms of the summary for the action, I would say that we've had quite a very, very insightful few sessions, starting with this morning, where we had our speaker, Princess Adejoke, talk to us about what the public sector is doing and the commitment that the public sector has towards promoting sustainable development for Nigeria and how that can feed into the African continent, particularly in terms of value creation, value addition, and how that can benefit the economy. Because at the end of the day, it's important that we understand what exactly is all of this action leading towards and what are we doing it all for. And for those of us that perhaps didn't join yesterday, how do we link what we discussed yesterday to what we discussed today? Yesterday was really looking at financing, looking at microfinancing, as well as looking at the financing for small and medium-sized enterprises, as well as sustainable financing and some of the challenges within that and how we can move forward in terms of ensuring that our projects and the long-term goals and plans that we have are financed adequately and sustainably. Right? In terms of, yes, you want to have a plan, but you want to make sure that whatever requirements that you need for the plan, you can ensure that for the life cycle of that project, it's going to be financed and there's going to be adequate provision for it. And then today was bringing it together to say, okay, what are the root causes of some of the sustainability issues that we have as developing economies? And Nigeria is a very good case study for that. So we looked at the health industry, and we also looked at education. And I would say that we really learned a lot from Coca-Cola's Safe Birth initiative, talking about how we need to really focus on partnership for the goals. So the goals are important, but goal 17, partnership for the goals, is possibly the most important, because it shows that we can't go it alone. We have to be able to identify key partners to work with. They can come as financiers, they can come as implementers, and private sector can also work with public sector, as Princess said this morning, so that we can ensure that we're able to achieve the objectives. And so one thing that we have to think about is, how do we partner effectively, and how do we ensure that our partnership is able to be a win-win for all, and so that it's not a zero-sum game. And so we need to start to really think about that for the long term. And then I really enjoyed the panel session talking on education, particularly because sustainability and development needs to be inclusive, right? We need to ensure that we're also addressing inequalities in how we are navigating our terrain, and education has been proven as one of the key components for addressing inequality and bridging the inequality gap. And we learned from the various panelists talking about how they are trying to work and partner with both public sector and private sector, and saying, okay, but the question is education for what? And I would say that the final presenter that we had from slum to school was really able to show us an initiative that is trying to be inclusive, because primarily we think virtual learning, is for a certain demographic, right? And what he's shown us and what they're showing is that we really need to start to think about more inclusive ways to solve our challenges and our problems. And I would say that the keynote speaker, Rodney, right, he really spoke about how it's important that we see accountants. I'm also a chartered accountant. Interestingly, I also have a degree in economics. So when he was speaking, I thought, goodness, if you want to be a CFO, or if you want to be a CFO or work in sustainability, this is the blueprints. Do a degree in economics, be a chartered accountant, and then come and do a PhD looking at sustainability. But it's important that we see that the core skills that we need, and this also ties back to education, the core skills that we need is that the people that are going to be managing and running sustainability programs need to also understand the bottom line, but we also need to understand how to articulate some of these challenges and these needs, because a lot of the time, and as Rodney said, the costs that we're incurring do not always come on the balance sheet initially. Some of these long-term costs, we will start to feel their effects 5, 10, 15, 20 years. How do we start to make those cases for addressing some of these challenges now? How do we also start to articulate that the future, to get the future that we need to already start to make those investments now? How do we make investors connect to our vision and our dream? And so I would say that how he shared his own perspective from an accountant is something that we can all go back to our organizations to learn, and even see how we can connect to educating our accountants and also educating people that work within our teams, even if they don't work in the sustainability desk, to understand how this entire picture needs to come together to achieve what we want to do. And so all in all, it's really about sustainability, of course, but it's also saying that this needs to focus on inclusive growth, and that it's only when we can address healthcare, because we need to be alive and we need to be alive to thrive, and we need to be healthy to thrive, and also education, we need to be skilled to be able to compete in the global marketplace. It's only when we can bring these together and plan them for the long term, and then also work with others to ensure that we're able to implement them, that we can really achieve the future that we want. And so that is the end of the summary for the day. I'm sure I might have missed some things out, but for those of us that joined in later, this is really it in a snapshot. And so thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ado Okupe, for that interesting summary. I'm finding late or even from the beginning, can tell that you had interesting flow, giving us what it is that we started with till the very end. Now we're going to move to the call to action and closing remark, and this will be done by the Professor of Information Systems and Associate Dean, Lagos Business School, Professor Olayinka David West.
Good afternoon, and thank you all very much for an exciting 2 days of conversations and discussions. And it's really an honor and a pleasure to sort of be the one to wind all this down and sort of give the push of what to do next. You know, since this very important dialogue commenced yesterday, we have learned a lot. From the keynote address to the panel discussions and case presentations, I believe we have been equipped for the right information to drive sustainable development in our various spheres of influence. But then again, we have to do more. We have to do this not because it's a nice to do, but because it's driving business and our organizations, social interventions, and public policy with a sustainability mindset that will make our economies and nations competitive enough to engage in the global market for our inclusion and sustainable development. And we're seeing that the imperative more and more. So it's key. I'm really glad that this has been a learning experience for all of you as it has been for me. So what's next? And so what? And that's a question I always like to ask us and ask ourselves. For us at Lagos Business School, yes, we facilitate these engagements and we'll continue to bring these thoughtful, thought-provoking engagements to the mainstream, because it's always worthwhile, because we need to be informed, we need to inspire you all to make a difference through your organization's sustainability priorities and journeys. We are your partners for sustainability. Our LBS Sustainability Center will continue to actively support businesses, public sector and institutions, as well as nonprofit organizations. So please feel free to reach out to us. But then again, the future is about all of us making Nigeria that sustainable plane. And what we're saying is that we will be the rails on which you can leapfrog and thrive. So please feel free to know that we're partners in this to guide you, to inform you, and to help test out your ideas towards a more sustainable Nigeria. So at this point, I just want to say thank you all for making out the time to be with us. You made the 2 days very engaging and inspiring, insightful, and interesting. And we look forward to supporting you and your organizations in your individual and corporate sustainability journeys, as well as helping you act on a lot of these learnings. Thank you all very much and enjoy the rest of the day. And hopefully we will see you again next year for the 2022 Sustainability Conference. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Olayinka David West. Thank you. Talking about 2022, ladies and gentlemen, let's quickly move on. And moving on would mean that we have the announcement that this will be taken by Douglas Ibu, the Director of Global Reporting Initiative, Africa. Over to you.
We look forward to continuing our collaboration with the LBS and look forward to but also to working with the LBS in designing a regional conference that we are for upon the LBS to work with us. I think already we shared in terms of some of the courses that we are to support the LBS and also social reporting and as well as for advancement. I think these are going all facilitated implications for corporate governance and relations. I think whatever will confirm that these courses are also going run in the year. But regardless, we will be ready for the LBS. I also add that we have scholarships for the
DRI certified sustainability professional that we are offering. We have multiple places for candidates from Africa. Our website, global, and then we offering scholarships of up to the course fee, and the course really looks at introduction to sustainability reporting and the DRI standards, reporting with the DRI standards as one of the, and then there's also a course on reporting on human rights using the DRI standards, as well as furthermore on integrating the SDG sustainability report. So I would urge you to look at that opportunity, then apply for consideration for that scholarship. We also offering two scholarships to our strategic partners, including LBS Sustainability Center, where DRI will have 100% of the cost fee for that DRI certified sustainability professional program. And then we also looking at continuing our collaboration very reinforcing sessions at conferences as well as other fora. From our side, in fact, if you go to our website and sign up, you see notifications on DRI, so that we are able to communicate with you in line with the EU service policies. And then I mentioned the regional conference that we have on the cards, and we're inviting LBS to help us in designing that. And then we look more forward to having joint sessions around ESG to reporting at some of the conferences by the LBS. And then with other partners in Nigeria and regionally, we're going to continue with the training and capacity building of companies in Nigeria, also working closely with the group, that is the Nigerian Exchange Group, as well as engaging data users, the investor community. We heard yesterday, especially from IOC, how investors are also providing leadership in terms of their investment decision making, as well as developing learning case examples of how institutional investors are making. And we also looking at working with media practitioners, developing a course that will be targeted specifically for media practitioners. I think that's all from my end. But Oliver or the LBS will continue to keep you posted on our joint initiatives and our joint offerings because of thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Douglas, and thank you, everyone. Douglas, I think that we had a bit of, there's some breaking in the audio, but I'll please, if you could put,
very much. Thank you, Mr. Katibu, for that one. Manager, Lagos Business School Sustainability Center, Oliver Attaya, to further click on.
Okay, hello, can you confirm you can hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So I was saying that we lost, Douglas, we lost your audio at some point. So please put some of that information in the chat box so that our audience can also click and read and even contact your office. We know DRI is a great partner. Thank you very much for supporting us to host this forum, which I think we can see has been very impactful and a very great learning experience. For us at the LBS Sustainability Center, just like Professor David West said,
We are your partners to help you support you to do this. We have several capacity building programs, and they are both customized and open programs. So please feel free to contact Teresa Coveso to find out a lot more about how we can support you through capacity building. We also are very open to having partners to host several forums like this and on different issues. So usually during the International Sustainability Conference, we're not able to discuss all the issues, but we have other forums like the Africa Responsible Business Forum that focuses on sustainability in the context of Africa. We also have the Chief Executive Forum on Sustainability that really engages C-suite officers in Nigeria's private sector, the Sustainable Development Symposium, and several other things. Like Dr. Franklin announced, we're really looking forward to 2022, where we will be launching the Innocent Chukwuma Social Impact Fellowship, which is an endowed program that will support Nigerian youths in the area of public policy, social innovation, social enterprise, impact investments to create the future that we want. I remember when Otto was speaking, he spoke a bit about also having a national agenda. And I put in the chat box at least the news clip I found about Nigeria Agenda 2050. So for those of us that are Nigerian or are in Nigeria, Nigeria does have a national development agenda, which is Nigeria Agenda 2050. And for Africa, we have the Africa Agenda 2063. And the SDGs are actually integrated into these two agendas. So I definitely would invite you to learn more, a little more about them and see what areas your organization or you as an individual can play in making sure that those agendas and dreams that we have actually come to pass. But I would really like to say a big thank you to everyone, all our speakers, our partners, our panelists, our case presenters, our attendees, our fellows, our students, our colleagues who have been on this for 2 days with us. I really hope you learned a lot. I hope you took out things that you can then act on. And we definitely look forward to supporting you to do that. So thank you on behalf of me and my team. And I want to see the team on the background slide because a lot of work goes into this. There's a huge body of, I will call them our sustainability champions who in LBS who worked tirelessly to bring about these events, to bring them to life. So thank you, Osanoa, thank you, Nemeka, thank you, Teresa, Uchenna, Imani, Amuche, Chineme. Yeah, I want to see the names, please. Anthony, Cynthia, and who did I miss? Did I miss anybody? And Ayotunde. Thank you very much, everyone. And thank you very much to Lagos Business School for also supporting us to do this. So we look forward to seeing you again. Please feel free to shoot us an email, call us, let us know what you're doing. You can subscribe to our newsletter, where we share our regular news about sustainability trends in Africa and around the world. And we also want to share your stories. We want to share what your organizations are doing, what you're doing. So please feel free to send that information to us as well. In conclusion, I'll say thank you very much, and I hope you have a nice weekend ahead. Moyo, back to you.
Thank you very much, Ariba, for that. Thank you for capping it off in a very amazing way. Before we finally say our goodbyes, we have some video presentation. I think we can do that now and then we'll return for our goodbyes. Thank you.
Effects of climate change, giving everyone access to clean water or ensuring that no child is forced to go to work, and whether it's mitigating the effects of climate change, giving everyone access to clean water or ensuring that no child is forced to go to work instead of going to school. There's so much more we need to do to create a sustainable global economy. At GRI, we believe companies and other organizations have a critical role to play in addressing these problems. That's why, in the late 1990s, we pioneered sustainability reporting. Sustainability reporting is an organization's practice of publicly disclosing its broader economic, environmental, and social impacts. The GRI Sustainability Reporting Standards are the first global standards for sustainability reporting. They feature disclosures on a wide range of topics such as energy use, diversity in the workplace, anti-corruption, and human rights, to name only a few. As a result, any organization can use the GRI standards to increase transparency with all of their stakeholders. This is the first step in transforming our global economy into one that's sustainable and inclusive. Reporting with the GRI standards can help you protect the environment and improve society while thriving economically. What's more, sustainability reporting can create a range of benefits for your organization, helping you improve stakeholder relations, enhance your reputation, and build trust. At GRI, we also offer engagement opportunities that can enhance those benefits. We support organizations throughout their reporting journeys. We set up training programs that explain how to establish a sustainability reporting process, and we offer services that help ensure reports are aligned with the GRI standards. Organizations can also join the GRI Gold community and connect with peers to develop solutions to shared challenges. And GRI also works with governments to promote smart sustainability policies and regulations around the world. For example, you can use GRI standards to show your contributions to the UN Sustainable Development Goals and to fulfill your reporting requirements under the EU Directive on Non-Financial Reporting. We also offer guidance on the alignment between GRI standards and other reporting efforts and international norms. So when you choose to use GRI standards, you're joining a global effort to contribute to sustainable development. At GRI, we're working towards a future where all organizations use transparency to transform our world into one where we create wealth for everyone while preserving the resources that drive our economies. Help us make this vision a reality.
I'll use one word: invaluable, because I came in with a desire to learn and understand the entire spectrum of what could be done, because there's not that much information out there on agribusiness, and it's been just in the 3 modules, the tremendous amount of information available has helped to begin to shape a deeper understanding, give insights on what needs to be done, and give you a better appreciation of what you need to do to move forward. Yes, there are handicaps, there are obstacles, but every challenging situation, if you can just apply yourself and get the right amount of information and right way to go about things, you'll do it well. And so I really say it's invaluable.
The agribusiness management program here at LBS has been extremely influential in exposing me, and I'm sure a lot of the other participants would agree, to a lot of valuable information that we would not otherwise have been able to get in such a concise format. It's also given us access to a fantastic network of individuals in the agribusiness space and also in other industries that can positively influence our work in agribusiness.
For me, this has opened my eyes to a lot of the things we take and assume and just think that, hey, it has to go this way. There are a lot more other factors and interplays that are involved. This has brought a lot to the fore. This has also brought to the fore the fact that when you look at a business, you need to look at the value chain of that business. Now, am I financing a business that is just taken on the surface while there's a deeper part of the business that can be incorporated for cash flows, to assure me of a cash flow in the life cycle of the project? This has, the program has gone a long way in making those clear distinctions. So it's not
All right, ladies and gentlemen, again, we want to say a very big thank you to you. I am sure that you got value from all of the conversation we had here from yesterday up until now. I am sure that you learned a lot. And again, remember, this is a Dialogue to Action conference. So it means that we need you to implement, from this point, haven't soaked in all of those information. It's now time for you to implement as much as you can. You might want to reach out to some of the speakers. You might want to reach out to team from the LBS for collaboration or partnership. I think that is definitely welcome. But remember that we are now supposed to move on to the implementation stage. So that next year, by God's grace, we'll come back for this conference. We can have an assessment of how far we've gone with the implementation process. But again, we just want to say thank you for being here. It's been 2 days of amazing and impactful conversation, and I'm sure that everyone is very well pleased with how far we've come. My name is Moyosorioluwa Elesho-Tepia, and it was a great pleasure moderating the sessions. Thank you for giving me the opportunity. And I think at this point, it's only fair that we say our goodbyes. But before then, if I want to drop your round of applause yet again for the LBS team and every of the persons that worked on bringing this project to reality. So please put your hands together once again before we finally say our goodbye. And also use this very short time to drop your contact if you want someone to reach out to you or connect with you on other platforms. Thank you once again. Thank you. God bless you. See you in 2022.
Non-profit leadership management program has been running for over 4 years, and within this period we've trained over 300 participants that have gained knowledge in areas of strategy, corporate governance, marketing, customer service, and different aspects as well, to make them to be better leaders, better responsible citizens, to continue to bring about positive impacts across Nigeria and across Africa.
The project really is designed to build capacity of young people who are running non-profits or working in non-profit and development sector. Another aspect of this project is what we call the personal social responsibility projects. Over the past 5 years that this has been running, we've seen several projects delivered across different communities within Lagos and outside